I'll call the City Council and Native Village of Eyak Tribal Council Joint Work Session of April 22nd, 2020 to order at noon. Chairman Olson, if you'd like to call the roll of the Tribal Council.
Thank you, Mayor Copeland. Tom Anderson. Here. Pam Smith. Present. Jack Hopkins. Raven Cunningham.
Present.
And Darrell Olson present. We have 4 out of 5 council members present. I'm sure Jack will get on shortly.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Olson. If I could have the clerk call the roll of the City Council.
Sure. Mayor Copeland.
Here.
Tom Baylor.
Here.
Kathy Sherman.
Present.
Jeff Guard.
Here.
Melina Meyer. Ann Schaefer.
Here.
David Allison.
Here.
David Gleason.
I'm here.
That's a quorum of council.
Okay, thank you. So I know that we were looking at having a joint meeting on Thursday, and we postponed it to here, and lots changes on an almost daily basis. So we do have kind of a placeholder work session topic here. But before we start the discussion, I thought, Chairman Olson, I might just pass the floor to you for a minute to start out.
Okay, thank you. I did want to mention that the Native Village of Eyak, we did pass the resolution before the council, and we did present it to the council. And the resolution, we worked on the resolution for 8 days, and in that time, a lot changed, but we did unanimously pass the resolution, and we did forward the resolution on to the City Council and the Governor, realizing that a lot had changed since then. So we just wanted to afford the City Council a copy of the resolution, and it is included. And I personally have reached out to every council member except for one who I left a message. But if you guys have any questions or comments on the resolution, we're more than welcome to discuss it. And that's all I have at this time.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Olson. City Council, any comments or questions? Bear with me, Council. I'm just getting a checklist so we can go through the Council in an orderly manner. But I'm not hearing any questions at this time. So I'll open it up to City Council. Do you have any questions or comments or suggestions for this work session or for the Native Village of Eyak? And I'll let you think for just a second, and then I'll go through a roll here. And I guess this is just a general discussion, so any observations or general comments or concerns in this forum are welcome. And I'll go first to Councilman Schaefer.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess my only question or comment or idea right now is just brainstorming ways that we can work together for the community. I'm not sure what that infrastructure is, but I'm not sure like how much progress has been made integrating members from NVE onto the IMT. But yeah, just different ways to incorporate both leadership entities for the response.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Schaefer. And before I proceed, I did want to give you a quick view from the room here at City Hall. It's myself, Councilman Baylor, City Manager Helen Howarth, Jason Gabrielson, our IT managing the YouTube, and then we have Susie Hirschleb, who's on the incident management team, also Aaron Muma, and then your incident manager and deputy, Paul Trombley and Mike Hicks, and then the city clerk, Susan. So, Councilman Sherman, did you have any comments?
Not at this time, although I know there were some suggested topics that maybe we could work on that Bert produced for us. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Sherman. Vice Mayor Meyer. Not sure if you had a chance to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just a couple minutes late right after the roll call was already done. But, I agree with Kathy's. Maybe we could just go down the list that Bert produced. Because at this time, I don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Meyer. Councilman Allison.
Yeah, just more of the same. Like to hear how we've made any progress on integrating them into the IMT and whatever we can work together on.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Allison. We'll park that question. Councilman Guard.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my only question that hasn't already been raised was, we talked before about everybody coming up with a list of resources available to them from the NVE side and the city side on that, see where we might have holes, duplications, or that. I was just wondering what would have been made on that yet.
Okay. Just taking a note here. Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I'm with Kathy. Just go over the same stuff Kathy said there. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Baylor.
Well, I guess I find the question kind of interesting if council's being asked to stay in our lane and just do policy. I'm not sure what, I think it's up to the incident command team to bring us where their holes are and where they could integrate. And if there's anything that council can assist in that, I mean, surely we would support that, but I don't know what holes they have or where they need personnel. And as I think we all support our medical team working together, and if they need to kind of work that out amongst themselves. So I'm not sure we can give any direction on where to integrate anybody, but I think everybody on council supports working together and look forward to those added resources.
Okay, thank you. So I know council asked a couple of questions here, and I'm not sure that the incident team's ready to answer right here on the spot, but with that, and basically those questions were, and correct me if I didn't capture these correctly, has there been progress in integrating the Native Village of Eyak into the incident management team? And have we identified any areas where there's duplications of efforts that could be, I guess better divided? So Deputy Incident Manager will speak briefly here, or speak to that.
Briefly, yeah, we were waiting on you two groups to get together. We were supposed to have this meeting last week and it was canceled. We were waiting on both the council and the Native Village of Eyak Council get together and iron out, there was a few legal issues that Helen had spoke to at the last meeting, and then we were supposed to have a meeting on Monday and that never happened. So we're kind of waiting on a little bit of direction, I guess, legally from you all between the two groups. Does that answer your question?
Okay, I think so for now. So Chairman Olson, I'll turn the floor back over to you.
Okay. At this time, could we go ahead and, if you guys don't mind, have Bert go through his list?
Please.
Bert?
Thanks, Darrell. I produced a list a couple days ago, mainly to, so we're not going in circles in terms of working together or trying to figure out how we're going to work together. The list was just examples of ideas of things we can possibly do together from the Native Village of Eyak side, not knowing what happens on the city side. So, you know, the procedures between incident command and city, for example, part of what was on the agenda last week on Thursday was the airport plan, and for the Native Village of Eyak to participate in that or develop it. But the incident command, based on the plans that I've seen, has done a great job with that. And I think it's counterproductive if NVE does that, where we could just offer any assistance or help that they may need for that plan. So, you know, for the first, that answers the first part of what we were supposed to talk about last week on the airport plan. There were some legal issues also that came forward. The procedure to talk about that is what I don't know. I don't know if we talk about that in this meeting, and if it's something that our legal counsel and the city legal counsel gets together and talks about. I would take direction from you guys on how to proceed with any of the legal issues that have been talked about. So I have not talked to my counsel about the ideas or the examples that I gave on things that we can do to work together. And when I gave those, like I said, they're ideas. I don't want these meetings to be not productive. Are there things we can do to work together? What does that mean? If there isn't, then there isn't, you know. But I do think that regardless, myself, Helen, Clay, Darrell, our staff, our medical teams, they already are working together. And so, you know, I think one question is, how productive are these meetings? Do these meetings need to continue to happen as a joint meeting, or should they happen as needed? And that's a discussion that I think both governing boards should have. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Mayor Copeland, this is Sherman.
Councilman Sherman.
May I just ask for clarification, maybe from the city manager, where do we stand in the legal review of integrating members of NVE into the IMT?
So at this point, the incident command team is set up not as a representative body, but as a body that is made up of people that have been trained in and have a specific skill that could help make the incident command team able to do their tactics to support what needs to happen on the ground. So there isn't any legal reason why someone from NVE couldn't participate, but we cannot say that the executive director or any specific person will be serving a role. We are looking. Apparently, we're looking for roles. That said, I, as city manager, do have a very specific role, as any other city manager will have. And the incident command structure is set up on the federal level, and it's set up with a very specific purpose in mind. And so the understanding is that we wouldn't have two city manager type positions on the incident command team just based on the legal structure, the federal structure that's been established. And there's definitely room on the incident command team for people to participate from any entity, and especially the tribe. And I think our goal at this point is to identify places where the incident command team needs assistance, and bringing that to Bert and saying, is there anyone on your team that could potentially fulfill this role? So I think that's where we stand. Paul or Mike, do you want to augment that? That's where we are. There's no legal reason not to include someone from NVE, but we can't adjust the structure that's been defined in code and by the feds.
Yeah, and we need volunteers to fill certain positions, preferably ICS trained. I know there's some folks over at NVE that have some training, and depending on their training, we might plug them into one role or another. If it's an office staff person, it can help finance or something like that. So I'm thinking along the lines of we could put together a list of positions we need to fill and provide that to NVE, and anybody in the community for that matter is welcome to assist. We had 2 people, 1 person volunteered last night, and she's going to fill in the demobilization unit role. She's good at what she does, and she'd be very good, even though she hasn't had much training in that. She has some ICS experience. So as far as the airport goes, there's a group of volunteers out there now that are working under our umbrella, under our structure, that have a specific set of protocols that they follow. After we research everything with the state as far as people filling out the travel forms and so on and so forth. We have a specific set of rules. So if folks wanted to volunteer for that, anybody is welcome. And we'll put them through the system, through the person that's running that operation, under the operations section and the port of entry group, and we'll put them to work. It's as simple as that.
Mr. Eric Olson, this is David. May you speak?
Yes.
I'm sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you, so I didn't quite catch the name.
Oh, this is Raven.
Oh, okay. Raven. Yes, go ahead, Raven. Thank you.
This is kind of just from what I've observed. I believe that this is going to be a lot longer than a lot of us may assume. I think that it would be very smart if we duplicated roles so that people weren't exhausted from the position. Like have somebody work under one of the main positions, just so that there's more than one person. When that person becomes tired, somebody could step up and already know what's going on.
And we're working toward that end. We've got, like in the command position, we've got a command and a deputy, so we're interchangeable. A lot of this is driven by whether or not the person has ICS training. For someone to, like in an incident commander's position, to replace that person, it has to be ideally someone with equal or more qualifications. They have to be interchangeable. So that's kind of the tough part. And, in some cases we'll have to take what we can get. So like if our finance department needs extra help in the finance department, we could maybe plug somebody from NVE, let's say, or the Wells Fargo Bank, somebody with financial experience into those roles as assistants or deputies. So that's a good point. And, right now we're still struggling to fill all the roles we need, and then of course secondary would be deputies and assistants and stuff like that. So so I think a good starting point is we could put together a list of some of the folks and the qualifications we need on the team, and put that out there for folks that have interest to fill those and see what happens.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Garden.
I got a quick question. It sounds like the incident command training is of fairly high importance to be functional in the ongoing efforts here. Is there any way we can start getting some ICS training for other folks? Can that be done online? Or is that something that needs to be in a classroom setting and would make it more difficult during the COVID time?
You can go to the FEMA website FEMA.org, I believe it is, and the basic trainings are ICS 100, 200, 700, and 800. Those are all courses you can take online. They shouldn't take more than, some are 15 minutes to an hour each. They're self-paced courses. You can take those online. That'll give you a basic understanding. The more advanced stuff, the ICS 300, 400, which we teach here, I'm one of the instructors. That's a structured class, has to be a classroom presentation. That's a 40-hour class, so that's not realistically something we can do right away. But the basic ones, anybody out there in the public, they can go online and get those courses themselves on their own, and it'll give you a basic understanding of what's going on, which is really good if you step into one of these roles. Even though you may not be fully qualified to do some of the stuff, it'll give you a better understanding of how they function.
Thank you.
Councilman Baylor.
This is Daryl. I have a question, and I guess it's more or less a clarification. I just want to make sure we're on track, and I'm on track. But so I guess what we submitted Bert's name to be on the IMT, and then we just recently changed that like 2 days ago because of the workload and everything. So we submitted Brooke's name. So will they be, I guess I'm wondering, will they be like a temporary, I guess I'm asking for clarification, what role NVE will have with the IMT, because it sounds like the IMT is a federal, a federal entity. So I'm just asking for clarification.
Okay, Chairman Olson.
It's not really a federal entity. It came out after 9/11. There was a presidential mandate that created the system we have now, the National Incident Management System, NIMS, and it's about a 700-page document, the big plan, and it provided for, it mandated that we train people, and some of it drives grants. Like some of the council people need to be aware that they need some of this training because it helps us get grant funding. So it's not a federally mandated program, but it's a structure that it actually was developed in the 70s by the fire service, and it's kind of grown and adopted, to where it is today. So it's a system. It's not a mandate. And we could throw the book out the window and just go, helter-skelter, and it probably wouldn't work real well. But it's a system. It works. We've trained in it for many, many years now. And, yeah, so it's a system. And like I said, going back to what I said earlier, I think if we come up with a list of where we need folks, and if you've got somebody that kind of fills those qualifications or some of them that can be helpful, we'll sure take a look at where we can plug them into the system.
Okay, Carl, this is Bert. Say something?
Councilman Baylor.
So let me circle back to the other question about people being trained. And, we have a lot of people in this community that have gone through the SERVS training. They've gone through HAZWOPER. They've confined spaces. So they have a lot of good training already. So I don't think it's a huge jump to get them trained into this system. And I know there's some people in town that have been involved in this system, and I think Mr. Groff comes to mind, and others that could certainly serve as a mentor. And so what I would have preferred to hear the incident commander say that we'll get somebody that's trained up on this, we'll set up a mentoring program, we'll have the information, and maybe we'll have, recommend people get online classes Monday through Thursday. I'll be there, or we'll have somebody there to answer questions and walk you through this and get you certified up. I mean, be aggressive and proactive trying to get people to help. Just to say, well, go online and then come get us, I think because I agree with Raven's comment, this is going to be a long haul, and we have city people serving on these positions. They're going to have full-time jobs to do too. So, now, all that being said, I realize you can't take a civilian and make them a fireman. You can't take them and make them a medic. You can't take them and make them a doctor, overnight. But there's a lot of positions, well, the airport, I can't see us having that served out there for volunteers. At some point, you know, there's going to be burnout, we're going to need replacement. So I would suggest reaching out to one of your trained up personnel that maybe have the time. Everybody's doing this stay-at-home thing, and maybe set up a little, do you want to go online? Do you want to sign up for these classes and mentor them through it? I don't think it would take a lot of effort, and you might get a lot more volunteers.
Hey, Daryl, this is Bert. Can I say something?
Yes, Bert.
So I don't want to, you know, have this incident command go helter-skelter. But I think there's options with a unified command, and I think that should be talked about with Helen and looking into it and how we could go from incident command to unified command. The Native Village of Eyak, we will definitely train in who we have representing there, so we do a good job in representing our organization and the community. So I think we would want, like Daryl said, it isn't going to be me. We're putting Brooke into that and Dena to help along, and I would still be a part of it on the NVE side in terms of meeting with them on the information to relate to incident command or unified command. But if you guys could please look at the unified command option.
We have been looking at that, and we're almost there. We're not quite there yet, but that's a very good point. And I didn't mean that we were going to go helter-skelter. I just threw that out as an example. We've got an organized structure. We're sticking with it. And like I say, people don't have to be fully qualified. You know, if you have a financial background, like I said, or just good organizational skills sometimes, depending on what the role is that we plug people into. Because we're a small community, and we've got community-wide, we've got some very talented people out there in all walks of life. We see it in the fire department all the time. I mean, we've got a huge group of folks there that are really talented. So, yeah, we'll, like I say, we'll get together and we'll see what we can draw from the community and from NVE.
And councils, I know this may look a little bit like sausage making. I want to kind of reiterate what Bert said a little earlier, that there's a lot of work going on between Helen, Bert, Daryl, myself, and staffs. So I don't want to leave the impression on the public record or with the councils that we're not working together on various fronts on an almost daily basis, whether it's collaborating on testing supplies or you know, airport entrance plans and so forth. And I think one item that, just to add to Bert's list, one item that for discussion, or I guess a request that I heard from NVE, was that the medical structure be more of a team structure. And I think I heard in the incident management team meeting this morning that that has kind of happened, that we now have a medical team. And Dr. Sanders is kind of the spokesperson for that team, but that has been structured more as a collaborative.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilman Schaefer.
Councilman Schaefer.
So kind of along those lines, Chief Hicks mentioned that they were waiting for direction from us in order to proceed, because we didn't have the meeting last week and then we didn't have it on Monday, and they were waiting for us to have this conversation before they proceeded more with the incident management integration. So I'm just wondering if he feels comfortable now with direction that's been given to proceed, or if there's anything else he needs from us at this point.
Well, if I'm understanding what's said here today, I think that the legal issues have been cleared up to where we can proceed. But that was my only concern. The last meeting we had was that we were waiting on some legal issues, and if that's been cleared up, well, then we're good to go. But I don't
Okay, that's good.
You guys will have to answer that.
I think, this is Helen, I think the question was as to what role NVE might play at the airport, and there was some question about how we might, whether that would be a contractual thing or whether NVE would just step in and take it over. And those are things that we could administratively discuss. Bert and I can certainly resolve and make happen. So I don't think some of those conversations need to happen at the council level.
So Councilman Schaefer, I don't want to, I want to make sure that we're capturing your comment. When you say the direction that's been given, I want to make sure if council feels like they're giving direction here that we're clear on what that is. And, you know, whether it's policy direction to collaborate with NVE and avoid duplications and to the extent possible incorporating into incident command or whatever, is a little different than a tactical direction to, you know, you will put people on this task force, what, you know, regardless of what that does for the structure and so forth.
Yeah, I feel like my question was answered. I just wanted to make sure that they weren't still waiting on something from us that we weren't communicating.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Schaefer. Helen.
I just had a question. You know, I just want to be, make sure I understand, or make sure that we all understand what we all are doing. Are there any questions on the part of NVE about some of this very specific things in your resolution? I think we've got on the table and have been done, but I'm just wondering if there are things that you have direct questions about that might be priorities for NVE that we as either the incident command team or city council might take a look at. I really appreciate that you guys have, NVE has come forward and said, we want to help. And that is a really, really, really wonderful thing to know. I know we're also operating under different legal frameworks. The city has to work within a very structured and rigorous legal framework that allows us to do certain things and doesn't allow us to do certain things. And NVE, your framework is different as well. And so sometimes we don't have all the possible options to us that you guys might have. So there might be things that we just aren't capable of doing for whatever reason that you guys are. And so, and as we understand our legal frameworks and understand what we each bring to the table, I think there are some really wonderful options for working together. So just acknowledging that there are issues that are inherent in our respective organizations, I think is an important part of that, and we will learn as we go. But I'm just wondering, are there any things that in particular, in terms of this COVID response, that you as a tribe feel is really important for us to look at? Or any questions you might have about very specific things that were addressed in your initial resolution that we could answer?
Chairman Olson?
Yeah, this is Darrell Olson, and I think our number one priority, which is also the city's priority, is the safety and well-being of our residents. And I think the sooner we get a harbor plan, an airport plan, and a testing plan implemented, the better, because we are going to have these people come in, and I think the residents of Cordova feel much better when we have a plan. The worst thing we could do is not have a plan and publicly announce the plan, because then the residents are fearful, the residents are wondering what's going to happen. I mean, I think at NVE, I'm speaking for myself as the chairman, but to me, just having the harbor plan, which we do have, the airport planning, the testing plan in place. I know I feel totally comfortable that our hospital is prepared. I feel comfortable that our Eyak clinic is prepared. So just having these plans in place, because we are running out of time. So that's my concern. Council members, I'll go down the list. What do you have any concerns or questions? Tom?
The same concerns you have, Bill, pretty much, okay?
Thank you, Tom. Pam Smith?
I'm just going to refrain from any comments at this point.
Okay, thank you, Pam. John Hopkins?
My concern is lack of enforcement for the mandates.
Thank you, Jack. Haven?
I just want to kind of go off of what you said. I think that you definitely hit the nail on the head. But my personal opinion is I see ourselves as leaders in the community that we're just tiptoeing around. And I don't mean that in disrespect, but just maybe that we need to check ourselves and constructively that we've done great short-term stepping up, but we need to simultaneously commit to a more sustainable approach because we are in this the long haul. We need to hold ourselves accountable and show the community that we're serious about the well-being. We need to wear our masks and gloves and be conscientious of our actions. We need to understand that we are being looked at every moment and that we need to show the community that we're working on this and we are serious about the well-being and health of the community. Fishing is happening and it's happening fast. And I understand, going off of what Helen said, that they have to abide by different rules than the tribe does, and they have to worry about the city as a whole. However, the tribe has responsibility to its tribal members, and they are permanent residents of Eyak, which is Cordova. And I hold myself to that oath that I said after I was elected into my position, and my duty is to my tribal people and their well-being.
Thank you, Raven. And that's the other thing I did want to mention. I really appreciate the city making the mask covering a mandate because I think that is going to help so much. So at this time, do you have an understanding, Helen?
Yes, I just want to, I think we are aware of and know about the harbor and airport plans. Those things are really getting locked down, and I will look forward to working with the tribe on some of the specifics of that. Enforcement, I think we need to work on that. We acknowledge, and I just want to share that the state, when we asked the question, basically what we heard, the state doesn't plan any enforcement measures and won't use troopers, National Guard to help with the mandates. The National Guard, however, will be used to extract patients from rural communities if needed. So if someone gets, if our hospital is not able to care for a patient because we don't have capacity room or their situation is more than we can handle, the Air Guard can be and will be deployed to come and pick up patients and take them to a hospital. So we do have that confirmation. But in terms of enforcement, we're kind of on the ground on our own, and Chief Hicks can speak to that. But the only other question I have, and I don't think we have a direction yet, is on the testing piece. So maybe that's something we could collectively work on as well. So I'll let Chief Hicks speak to enforcement.
Yeah, we are enforcing the mandates to the best of our ability. We have received calls and looked into those and investigated them. We have tools we can use. We can fine people up to $500 fine and a mandatory court appearance. The city passed that resolution for people violating a mandate. There are state laws that we can apply if necessary. So we are enforcing it, but fortunately, pretty much everybody's complying with the mandates and trying to do the right thing. And as long as we keep encouraging people to do that, I think we'll be okay. As far as the airport plan has been in use now for quite some time, and we're daily we're out there with folks, and it's being fine-tuned as it's work in progress. All of these things are work in progress. I equated it earlier to somebody about it's kind of like a survival situation. You survive the plane crash. You get out of the plane and you realize you don't have any injuries, and okay, now how do you make your situation better? You need to set up some shelter to wait for somebody to come and rescue you. So we're at that point now where we've put a lot of stuff, a lot of effort, plans, people, equipment into place for this thing. So now we're at a point where we're fine-tuning stuff and just kind of take a little step back, look at what we've got in place and how can we make our situation better. You always want to try to make your situation better. So for lack of a better explanation, but we do have this, it's work in progress, and we're moving forward, sometimes at a snail's pace, it seems like, but we are moving forward.
But I think we all acknowledge that the burden of enforcement is yet to come as we get more and more people in town. So that's an area where I think we could certainly have a conversation for assistance there. And the whole notion of testing, there's a lot of differing ideas about how to proceed with that. And I would say that there's no clear direction yet.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Gleason.
Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I'm glad Jack brought up enforcement, because that is the main concern. Almost all of my calls are about that right now, and we recently received a letter from some concerned, a group that is bringing that up. And so my big concern is that we don't have the manpower we need, and I'm wondering, because once the whole fleet shows up, that's going to be a lot hard. It's going to be really hard for Chief Hicks and his 2 police officers to take care of the town and the harbor. And so is any of that federal money that we're supposed to receive, can we hire help for him with any of that money?
I'm sure probably, we haven't yet gotten the rules on how that is to be utilized, but it's for COVID response and COVID recovery for the municipalities. And again, those monies won't be in, and I guess we get our first distribution perhaps in early May. But Chief Hicks, again, would have to speak directly to what his needs are. And I think we could, certainly look at that and figure out how we could get him some help, but it's really dependent on what he thinks might work.
It's not so much a funding problem, it's a personnel problem. And this is a nationwide issue long before this problem came up. We still have 2 openings that we can't fill. We're not getting nobody's applying. And when we do get applications, a lot of them don't meet the standard, and there are police standards that they have to meet before we can hire them. So that's been the big problem, is getting qualified applicants to fill those roles. We have 1 in the academy now. When he gets out, we'll be up to 4. And then we would have 1 more opening, but it's finding qualified candidates. It's not so much, and we threw money at it a while back. We raised the wages $5 an hour across the board to attract more applicants in it, and we did get some, but getting them through the process, and it's a long process. It's, it's difficult, and it's not so much a money issue as it is a people issue.
Okay, well, I got one other question, if I may. The mask rule that Helen put into place, is that enforceable under Ordinance 1185, and can we associate some value of a fine to that? I think that's really the only one that's going to be super easy to, write a ticket for. The rest of them, 6 feet apart, I mean, you got a tape measure, that's not going to be super easy to do that, but the mask is an easy one to hold people accountable on. I just want to make sure that the way it's written, we can fine an individual for that, the way that's written.
Yes, we can definitely fine people. The mandate, the fine that you guys approved, the ordinance for fines, was up to $500, and this mask rule will fall under that up to $500. And we, Hicks and I discussed a fee schedule that would be up to, it was $50. Our goal with all of this is to not slap fines on people as much as just encourage that they follow the rules. And if they don't, obviously, enforcement will come into play. I think I heard Governor Cuomo basically say, yeah, just try to walk down the streets of New York City right now without a mask on. You're going to hear about it in the most New York way possible. And I'm going to guess that a lot of the enforcement of that mask rule is going to come from citizens who are concerned about the people who are standing around them not following the rules. That's asking a lot of our community, but I certainly hope all of us can be good citizens and make sure that all of us are complying with the rules.
So, So council, maybe I can go back to a structure so that we can incorporate comments again. Because we had Native Village of Eyak went through and kind of shared items that they had concerns with. So maybe we could do that with council. And I'll just have an order here of Councilman Meyer and then Baylor, and then I'll go through the list. Councilman Meyer?
Yeah, I was just kind of taking off of the conversation that has been happening just now about enforcement, and wanted to ask Hicks if, because I remember it was quite a few years ago, but there used to be people that weren't police officers, but they did parking tickets on Main Street. Is there something like that that we could do to hire people that aren't full-on police officers, but maybe people who are up to date and could get somewhat just local training on what our mandates are to be out there in the community telling people to put them on, and they can call for police backup if they need to be, but under the police umbrella still.
We used to have a community service officer. It was full-time, and I held the position for about 1.5 years before I became a police officer. And then sometime after I left the police department years ago to work for the troopers, they made it a seasonal position. And, excuse me, and that's something that we could look at as an emergency hire probably. I think Helen would have the authority to do that. And that's an excellent idea. And I think I know of a couple people that might fit that role. We may have one in town that did have some experience doing that at one time seasonally. So yeah, that is a real good point. If we could get one or even two of those folks out there on the streets, it would take minimal training. Yeah, that's another option. It's a really good option.
Okay, did that answer your question, Councilman Meyer?
Hello?
Councilman Meyer?
Sorry, I was with you.
Okay.
Thanks, that was a good, I think that would be a route really worth going down. And if you need extra funding from council or anything, I don't want to have to wait on seeing what we can get from the CARES program or not. So if you need some extra funding, I would encourage you to bring it to council, because I think even hiring more than 2 of them would be very appropriate during this time. And maybe we could even get them out at the airport, be able to help with the harbor, walking the docks, things like that. I think we need to really be proactive in doing. And so hopefully something like that, get what you called them, would be a good avenue. And I'd be very supportive of that.
Councilman Baylor.
And a little thought of humor, I'm envisioning the iceworm beard police that go around.
Well, they already have their own uniforms, so that wouldn't be a problem.
And sticking with enforcement, you don't have to answer this now, but the thought occurred to me, again, going back to the situation where you had a boat come in, there's multiple people on it, person's sick, you take them up to test. You don't want those people on the boat to be wandering around. Under our fine ordinance, do you have the authority to say you have to stay on this boat? And if you do have that authority, if you don't have it, then we probably need to get that in there. And if you do have it, then it's simply a matter of maybe from somebody from the harbor or something. You wouldn't have to tie up an officer. They said, once you tell somebody you're going to $500 fine, they're going to stay on the boat. So just that thought process too. And I don't know if that covers it. And if it doesn't, then we probably should make sure it does.
It does, because the mandate says if you enter the community, you have to self-quarantine for 14 days. So if they're refusing to do that and wandering around town, they're in violation of the mandate, which is a $500 fine and a mandatory court appearance.
So you wouldn't have to tie up one of your officers' time, I think, if you designated somebody, just keep an eye on this boat from a distance. Then if they get off, they're going to get a $500 fine, and then they're going to call you. And
that would be under the community service officer program, potentially, if we had somebody to do that.
Yeah, everybody's got a cell phone. They see them get off the boat. It's
well, yeah, I mean, people call, they call us all the time for different things. And
you got it.
So yeah, I mean, we get reports, they call in the station on something, we investigate it, and we resolve it one way or another, the best we can.
So City Council, we're just going through and asking, are there suggestions for the airport plan, harbor plan, or things you'd like to see? And Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I'm with Vice Mayor Meyer on what she said, and I know our staff and the mayor, or the attorneys are all working together on things. I think bring us some proposals of how we can work together. I think to steal a thought, tribal council member Hopkins had at one of our meetings in the past. We need to see some action and quit talking about it. We talk about this. We have meetings all the time, and seems like we're always saying we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Let's get on it and get it done. Looks like we've got money coming to fund some of these things, and we need to get on it. People in the public need to see some action. I know, and we all know, sitting at the table, that a lot is being done, and people are working their butts off, more hours than they ever thought they would or should. But the public doesn't see that, and we need to get that visual aspect out there in the public. So I'm in favor of doing whatever we can to be public about things out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Sherman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one quick comment. I heard Brooke and Denna's name mentioned to be part of IMT and Unified. I'd really like to see that happen. I think just having someone from NVE at the table, the meeting, helps us with communication and sharing our resources. And I too is going to, again, I'm answering the Cordova Prepared emails, and I am hearing pretty much what Mr. Allison was just referring to, a need to see things. So signage up at the harbor in all places, flags for people who are quarantining, and then definite need for enforcement. And I completely agree with Vice Mayor Meyer about the community service officers, and I would say anywhere between 6 to 10 at least. And that's all I was going to ask too, maybe the medical team could be tasked with working on the testing plan, or maybe they're already doing that too. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Sherman. And I'm kind of keeping a placeholder to talk about testing a little bit as we go through this round. Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I'm with Melina. That's an awesome idea, and I think that the sooner the better. So I don't know if we can direct Helen to put that up, post that employment opportunity immediately, or if that's the will of council. But I think the sooner we have those people, working, the better, because the fleet's about to arrive, and so the harbor to me is our weak point. So,
and
we also need to assign some values to define. We haven't even talked about that, and I don't know what Chief Hicks' capabilities are in there. If he can just decide on the spot what it's going to be, but we should probably give them some direction on how much it costs if you get caught without a mask, or if you're in a vehicle with 8 people. Obviously, you're not social distancing, so how much does that cost, and so on and so forth. So that's something we need to put on something we need to have on the future agenda there, the near future. So that's all I have.
I was just going to circle back to the tribe. we're kind of discussing some very specifics, but I'm wondering if there's any way that you envision you might be able to step in and participate in these solutions. You don't have to answer me now, but I certainly invite that. If we need enforcement, you might have.
We're really digging into tactics right now. And we need to back off on the tactics part.
Exactly.
I think we're digging into the weeds right now. So I just want to make a comment about that.
I appreciate that. I thought that might be where Helen was going, but Councilman Gleason, I don't know if you heard earlier, there's already a $50 fine in place for the masks. Helen and Chief Hicks have established that. He's been a lifetime law enforcement officer, knows what the state laws and works with the courts on doing all that. We start telling him how and when and what to do. We're going to slow him down, and they're going to have to start worrying about what the fine should be instead of keeping the community safe. So, but we appreciate the comments, and your team are sitting here listening, so they're taking this under advisement. They're trying to get to the goals that you have for them.
I wasn't saying order them around. They're asking us for direction. I didn't know if that was, and that's why I said I don't know if he can do that on the spot already. But if he can't, that's all I was saying.
Oh, okay.
Correct. We have to do that. But if they don't need any direction in the fine department, then fine. That's fine too.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. I thought you had heard earlier that they had established a $50 fine, and you thought that should be changed, and council needed to put that on an agenda or something.
No, I missed that little tidbit. Sorry.
Okay. Councilman Gleason, did you have other thoughts or things you'd like to see?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Guard.
I think most of the stuff I've been thinking about has been fairly well covered by everybody. I just wanted to make one statement on fines, not so much to get into the nitpickiness about it, but these fines were always intended for an educational tool. I don't think you're going to beat anybody into submission with a $50 or a $500 fine. But if they can just be used as an educational tool, was all they were ever designed as. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Schaefer.
Hi, no, I don't have any additional thoughts really at this time, other than I support the enforcement idea that Melina suggested, and then also support a testing plan that was also brought up, being developed by the medical team, and just continue working through those plans, how we're going to protect elders and compromise in the community as people come to town. So just keep working on the plans, and we want to see them even if they're working documents.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm kind of hearing is policy direction, request from tribal council, and policy direction from the city council is step up enforcement, and we'll make resources available for that. And I think the team has heard that here, so thank you. I just wanted to circle back to testing, because Bert and I particularly had kind of mapped this out a little bit, and we kind of have a current status. Chairman Olson, if you don't mind, if Bert or I just shared a little bit, at least to let both councils know what, and also I wanted to let City Council, and you know that Dr. Sanders is online and available, and City Council had asked that the medical team be available in these discussions because this is a medically driven pandemic.
Yes, Mayor Copeland, please do update us on testing.
Okay, so I'm going to defer to Dr. Sanders because there are tons of testing opportunities and all over the map out there. But I think it would maybe be good to hear a little bit about what testing can and can't do for us, because I think there's some misconceptions about the accuracy and efficacy and usefulness as a tool, and also maybe the perception that that we aren't very aggressively monitoring and pursuing testing opportunities. I just wanted to share for the groups that Senator Murkowski called me this morning and just reminded us that the Senate just passed a $25 billion package specifically for testing. The state of Alaska is going to get a share of that, and we can pick up. She encouraged us to pick up the phone to the governor's office if and where we see tests that could be useful for us as we enter our fishing season. So, I wanted to share that support with the community. But so actually, Bert reached out and with some testing ideas and some resources. And again, this is a great place where we don't know if there are rules and regulations and legal requirements through Medicare and Medicaid and whatnot. CCMC may not be able to offer tests for free. They may have to charge a big $140 or $150. That's something that the tribe may be able to waive. Conversely, the tribe has requirements that they may not be able to. So this is a place where the tribe and CCMC can work together to maybe make something happen that neither one of us could make happen independently. So in that vein, we just talked about opportunities, and what we kind of mapped out is A, financial resources, and B, going to the medical team and see what their guidance was on testing and what type, so that we could jointly work to pursue that. And we already started a little bit with public service announcements yesterday and a public a press release regarding the collaboration, because we think that'll strengthen our position if and when we go to the state and asking for financial or directly for testing resources. So that's kind of where we're at right now, is that if and when and where the medical team says, yes, this is one we can use, then we can rally and pursue that. So with that, I'd let Bert weigh in, and then perhaps Dr. Sanders.
Okay, thanks, Clay. Before I talk about the testing, I want to just help the progress along on incident command discussion. The unified command is also listed as an option in the city emergency operations plan. So I hope that helps along in speeding up a decision on the tribe and its position to be on a unified command. In regards to testing, Clay has said, we've been talking and really trying to come up with a plan, and as he said, and I'm sure as Dr. will support, is that it's a very daunting task to get through the different methods of testing that kits available, what would work for Cordova's situation, but to really let the public know that this is a priority on both sides. Priority that staff has really been putting a lot of time and effort into as well, and I think the joint unified emergency group is playing a part in that as well. So I think taking the information from them and what they have to say is going to be huge for the tribe and the city to support when it's time to come up with a testing plan. And I think we really need to work on getting the state of Alaska, and they may already are on board, but they need to play a big part in terms of what Cordova is looking at as a testing plan. And then the funds that Clay was talking about, that Senator Murkowski talked about, I think is big. So I think step one is trying to find a testing method as soon as we can, so we are able to understand what the supplies or the testing supplies or kits would be needed to really do a good testing plan for Cordova.
So, Dr. Sanders, short of putting you on the spot, I wonder if you wanted to share anything in general about testing.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start off by saying, just giving you kind of my terminology. When we talk about testing and we talk about a screening test, we're talking about people that have no symptoms that need to screen to try to identify symptomatic carriers. In Cordova, diagnostic testing available for anybody with any COVID
say, Dr. Sanders, for some reason you're cutting out. I don't know if you can go to headphones or maybe
Oh, is this better?
much, much better.
Okay. So I'll just repeat what I said. In my terminology, when I say screening test, I'm saying screening looking for people with no symptoms, trying to identify asymptomatic carriers that may expose others to COVID-19. The diagnostic test is what we currently have available in Cordova. The diagnostic testing is what insurance companies cover. We use the Abbott ID, and the state will also run the samples for us. The state right now is not advocating for any screening tests. So we can't send screening samples to the state lab, and we cannot use the Abbott ID now for screening. There are many companies that are offering different types of screening methods. So the ideal one for our community would be one that does the reverse transcript-based PCR. These tests are collected usually with a nasal or nasopharyngeal swab. How effective the test is at finding virus depends on how well the swab is collected and how it's handled afterwards. So we need to make sure the people that are collecting those are trained and know how to collect them. If we're rolling out large screening to, say, a population like the fish processing units as people are coming in, this logistically is a lot of work to organize, and this is what our team is working on trying to figure out right now. How do we organize these logistics, making sure that we have the information on the person that's being tested, we collect the test appropriately, we send it to the right place, and then get those results back and are able to identify, find a person and identify them with the right results. Those little things, it sounds like, oh, that would be simple, you just put a sticker on or whatever. It's a lot of work to figure out those logistics. And the other piece that you touched on, Clay, is figuring out, well, what are we allowed to offer in terms of the collection fees being waived and who can waive them and who has the manpower to be able to roll this out. So we are looking at that, trying to find what, for many companies that are offering that test to us, I think we can probably have a test run at a company for around $40 to $50. It's all the other pieces that we're working to get put into place. There's another type of testing that is an antibody or a serology test. This is a test that I wouldn't recommend at this point for local people in Cordova. It might be a good test to give to people that are coming from areas where there's a high level of community spread where the person is traveling from, or if they're traveling through areas that have high community spread. If you do the antibody test without high numbers of community spread, you're going to have more false positives than actual positives. So I think that right now, it's a little premature for our community. The state has also given us that guidance that we're not ready for that test yet. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sanders. And I think Chairman Olson, we are over an hour now, so maybe I'll turn it over to you and Tribal Council for any final questions on the testing, or Dr. Sanders, or comments.
Sure. I was just going to make a note. I read an article about Alaska Dutch Harbor and their testing. That's why I brought it up today. But go ahead. At this time, I will ask Tribal Council if you have any questions or comments about testing. Tom Anderson.
I don't have any. I don't have any on testing. It seems like the Lanka has it pretty well under control. So I'm kind of happy with what they're doing down there.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Tom Smith?
Yeah, I'm the same as Tom. I don't really have any direct questions. Sounds like you guys are doing your homework, and I'm just hoping the best for Cordova when we really need this testing and to help our community. That's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. Jack Hopkins?
Just keep getting all the supplies you can. That's all we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Raven Cunningham?
Yeah, I think everybody else said it. I don't have any more questions to ask. I'm very happy to hear that our two medical systems are working together well. So thank you.
Thank you, Raven. Those are the only comments Tribal Council had.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Olson. I'll go to City Council. Councilman Allison?
Nothing more from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Sherman?
Nothing more for me either. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Meyer?
Yeah, just one comment or suggestion. I don't want you guys to take this as nitpicking, but maybe the incident command team minutes that council is now getting pretty much on a daily basis. One thought is maybe sending that to either Bert or all of NVE's council so they can see a little bit what's happening behind the scenes. And then that way, if they have something to offer, that would be a good starting point to get going right away so that they can have input. And I'm very supportive of a unifying command structure, if any way that we can do it. I think that there was a lot of good discussion today about training people, getting some community service officers in rotation. I would like to see them in some kind of bright colored t-shirts so that they're easily identified and wearing masks. And I think that would be a good show. I know a lot of us are just at home, so we venture out just to go to the grocery store or just to pick up our grocery list. But I think when we see that and see people out and about and being able to help with the enforcement side and just showing, it's just a face to show it. And so if other people are out and about and they're seeing somebody in a bright colored shirt, then they know that they can see the action being taken. And I think that's a step that maybe a lot of this stuff is being handled behind closed doors, because that's kind of what is happening with what is going on in the world. You know, we're social distancing and we're not having public meetings where anybody can walk into, where it's very behind the scenes type of a thing. So whatever we can do to show it, even signs that don't say mandate stuff, but just wear masks, we do stuff like that, I think that would show the community that stuff is being done. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. My list here. Councilman Gard?
Yeah, no comment. I think everything's been covered.
Councilman Schaefer?
No comment at this time. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Councilman Gleason?
Yeah, just one comment. I made this comment at our last meeting, and I believe Raven asked this question in a letter, and I was just going to let the tribal council know that subsistence fishing is open and unrestricted under state health mandates this year, so it's going to be the same as it's always been. What that means, Cordova, is you can subsistence fish Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. Same as normal. You can bring whoever you want on your boat. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. And Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, you know, I think there's some good ideas and discussions here, and I think Mr. Gleason or Mr. Allison spoke to it. Just because one council person says something, that doesn't make it code, or that doesn't mean yet the incident command team has to go out and do that. These are just suggestions, and we're not pulling out these suggestions and ideas off our backside. We're getting this from the community. They have their questions and concern. They do relay those through council. So I think the sensitivity that was shown here about, we're getting into the tactical or this or that, these are just suggestions. These are concerns. They're being brought forward. Now, as a group, if we take them up and start trying to give direction, yeah, now you get into tactical things. But I don't want to stymie anybody's thoughts or ideas on how we can build a better mousetrap. So, and I think trying to jump on that right away can have that cause. So for the folks at NVE and for the rest of the council and for the community, if you've got thoughts, ideas, you know, that could help this situation better, bring them forward. Don't be afraid about that. And hopefully we'll get a hearing. And if it's something incident command team can use, then it'll be up to them to adapt it and work out the kinks and make it happen. So please keep bringing your information forward. It's helpful.
Thank you, Councilman Baylor. And that just reminds me, also for the public and council and all of us actually, as the public approaches us with ideas, encourage them to also either submit those through cordovaprepared@yahoo.com or to the incident management team, because that's where it can get the quickest review and operationalize it. And so with that, if there's no objections, we could go to adjournment. So I just leave it open for a minute here for any objections or any final comments across the board before we move to adjournment.
No objection from NVE.
Okay, council, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, I'll call the special city council meeting of April 22nd, 2020 to order.
Move. Whoop.
Mayor Copeland,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Kathy Sherman,
Here.
Jeff Guard,
Here.
Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer,
Here.
David Allison,
Here.
David Gleason.
I'm here.
That's all of council.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Have a motion, a second to approve the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections desired?
Yes, this is Helena.
Councilman Meyer.
I would like to add COVID-19 discussion items, probably 12A, so that if anything comes up that we want to discuss, then we can do that, not 12. I second that.
Okay, I want to move that down under new business, and I'll call it 13A.
Well, it's 12, eh? Oh.
Well, that's correspondence. Or 12A under new business,
Yeah.
just so it's under new business.
Yes, understood.
Okay, there we go. I see 12A and I leap to following 12. Okay. Anything else? Any other modifications? Okay, so
Just do no objection.
is there no objection to the agenda as amended to include that discussion item? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as amended. Does council have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to declare?
On the main motion yet?
He asked if there was.
I have, if there was any
as
objection,
amended?
yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry.
sorry. Any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to declare? Okay, hearing none. We have a guest speaker, the incident management team report.
Yeah, good afternoon. Since our last meeting, when I handed out the objectives from the incident management team to the policy group, we had 34 objectives and we've whittled them down to 16. A lot of them were just kind of clerical things, but a lot of it we're still working on. Chief Hicks had made a new org chart and also a new present objectives format along with our daily comments that will be put up on the website as soon as we can get the dots crossed and the T's dotted and blah, blah, blah. So moving forward, we also would like to recommend to the policy group a face covering ordinance. And also from what the governor was saying about opening up restaurants, we would like to ask the policy group to kind of carry status quo through the community with our public groups. So we can continue to do, we haven't even hit the fishing season yet and the governor's opening up the state, but we would like to recommend not opening up the community with his regulations and rules coming down. So if you have any questions.
Okay, so just a clarification on the face covering is a rule, and because Helen put that rule in place, so you're just asking for council concurrence to support that rule?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I hear ordinance and I start to think about codification and everything. So, and then the state has mandates coming out this Friday that are going to start repealing some of their earlier mandates, and you're recommending that the policy makers consider keeping the current mandates that we have and rules that we have in place in Cordova in place.
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Baylor.
So then I don't know where we would discuss this. I assume it's going to get on the agenda. So just throwing it out there is, there's been a lot of studies where outside seating in restaurants can be done safely. We have that capability. So for me, I would like to have that discussion before we tell the restaurants that they can't. So where that discussion starts and stops, I don't know, but just throwing it out there.
I think that would be an action item for the council to put on an agenda to discuss.
Okay, so so when those rules start getting relaxed, that kind of a phased relaxation like that.
Yeah, I think we should probably just take it up and start talking about it, because it was, again, we'd have to run this by the medical team, but what I have seen and read, that outside seating is a lot safer. So there is that possibility to keep some of these restaurants in business.
Okay, Council, I have Councilman Baylor's right here in the room, so I'll go right through the list here then for you online for questions or comments to the incident commander. Councilman Gleason.
And really, I guess I would say that I am in favor of the face covering rule. If we're supposed to be giving him concurrence on that, then I am definitely concurring with that. And I also would concur to not open up the community, but it looks like we're going to actually have that discussion. So.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Gleason. Vice Mayor Meyer.
Yeah, I'm, what Gleason said, I'm in support of the face coverings, and also I think we definitely need a discussion on opening things up. And I don't know, I believe that the governor said Friday, so we may want to have that as part of the discussion for COVID policy, just to have an initial discussion on where council is at on that. And then have it on as an action item when that's appropriate to do so. But I think we should discuss it a little bit today.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Garden.
I got a couple different things to say here. I am personally in favor of the face covering ordinance we just got. As far as the questions of does every policy have to originate with the council, there are other mechanisms in our emergency management structure that things can emanate from there, policy can emanate from there, and then council has the right to either concur with that or remove it from the books at a later date. But everything doesn't have to emanate out of the council. Sometimes things have to move quicker. There's perceived a need for it from out of the management structure, and there's nothing wrong with that. Two, as far as relaxing our local restrictions, that we may see the state restrictions at the state level being relaxed. I think it would probably be a good idea to just hold where we're at now, but this is a big enough issue. We should probably put it on a next agenda and put plenty of advertisement out there so the public has a chance to comment on it before we make a final decision. But if we could some way come out today and just say we are holding the line on where we're at for now until we can have an advertised meeting so we can get the input from the community that we want. That's all I got on either of those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the face coverings. Just a thought. I personally, I can wear a face mask. I won't wear the cloth one, but I have medical ones that my dialysis center provides provides to me, so I'd be happy to wear that. But I think it's better to have it be requested but not required, I guess. And my reasoning is that the people who are going to wear the mask on a voluntary basis are the people who are going to have a stack of 3 or 4 in their house, and they're going to throw it in the washer as soon as they get home and wear a new one the next time they go. They're going to be careful with how they handle it. People that don't want to wear them, but you're requiring them to wear them, they're going to wear the same one every time, all the time. They're going to have it sitting in the pickup truck next to their seat, and they're just going to throw it on. And that thing, within 3 days, is going to be more contaminated than the toilets at the harbor. So I just got my caution about requiring people to wear face masks, because I think that those that don't want to wear them are going to end up contaminating more than they could, or than they should. That said, I definitely think we need to have a discussion on the opening up places. I don't have a problem with it, with the governor's stipulations, 25% capacity in the restaurants, et cetera. But we need to make a decision before Friday morning, because Friday morning is when it comes into effect, the governor's thing. So unless we do something different, then I think state rules will apply there, unless we have something more something to extend that locally. So I think if the big cities can do it, so can we. So anyway, that's my thought.
Okay, Councilman Schaefer.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I am in support of the face coverings mandate. I was also a little confused about the process, but I think I understand it better now that because of the emergency order, they can pass these through the team, and then we can choose to support or not. But yeah, so at this time I am in support of the face coverings. I think we need to do, along with the mandate though, I think there needs to be a ton of public education of how to keep those clean, so that we're staying safe. So there needs to be a big public education push and making masks available for people. So there's that. And then the issue about the governor starting to open up the state a little more, I feel like we're going to have this influx of people into our small community, and I think it's probably best to just err on the side of caution at this point. We haven't had a case yet that we know of, but we are about to have a bunch of people come to town. The restaurants can just still do the takeout that they've been doing. And so I'm of the opinion to continue as we are currently.
Thank you. Councilman Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am wholeheartedly in favor of the face covering rule. I understand the process that we went through for that. And I have been wearing face covering anyway. I agree with Ann that some education needs to get out there, and I think that's an easy thing for us to do through the IMT-TIO team. And as for, I guess some clarification, is the governor's rule coming out on Friday, or is he announcing what's going to be happening on Friday itself, or does the rule go in place?
The rule is going to be in place officially as of Friday, the 24th.
He's already announced, Councilman Sherman, he's already announced what he's doing, and then it's going to be effective Friday.
But the language isn't out. supposed to come out.
Oh, the language isn't out yet.
Language says today, but.
Okay.
Not there yet.
So in that case, some of these other things that the governor has said is, as a small rural community, we have opportunities to decide on our own. Is that still the case?
Yes.
So, and to be clear on process, the incident management team is going to keep those in place. They're signaling you, council, that they're going to keep those in place. They're asking for concurrence because when they actually implement it, council will have 5 days basically to overturn it. So that's kind of how process works, right, Helen?
Yeah, I just want to say that what our official position is that we're communicating that unlike other communities that don't have a huge influx of people at a very specific time like Cordova has, the governor's mandates make sense. It's status quo. Anchorage doesn't see a huge change in population. They've got their infection rates under control, and they're ready to just kind of stabilize things. We are in a different position where all of a sudden, huge influx of people, the whole landscape changes. So our mandates are going to stay in place until we have an opportunity to identify how that influx of people is going to impact our community and our ability to respond to a potential COVID outbreak. So totally have that locked and loaded. We will have new language in our mandates coming out, our rules coming out. We're just waiting for the final language from the governor so that we understand how to react. So again, we will have the right language in place to keep things as they are now. And then if council wants to make any changes, obviously, we're used to changes every minute of every day, so we'll do it. But I think we're in place to keep things as is until you, as a council, say we want to go in another direction in consultation with the incident command team.
And also, I'd just like to say that what we are doing right now is working. So let's not change it until we know when to start easing back a little bit. And I think it's too soon right now.
And I just add for, oh, I'm sorry, is that Councilman Sherman?
Yeah, I was just going to say, then I completely concur with the incident management team, and I also agree that it should remain status quo. Thank you.
Okay. I would just add the PIOs this morning went on CDC and got some basic masking guidelines, and we incorporated that into the noon radio spot, the small spot. So that went out, goes out at I think 1, 5, and 8 o'clock to start giving some masking guidelines, communicating those to the community. So I'll start back at the top. Again, thank you for the concurrence and guidance there. Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, so in regards to the mask, I'm kind of on the fence on that. I kind of understand what Councilman Allison is saying. But part of my problem, I disagree with the process that was used to develop this plan. I think if you go back to your what is it, emergency operation plan, to me it clearly spells out that this is a policy and medical decision that should have been discussed. And what I like about that is we would do that in an open session, and that would allow the public to give us input and suggestions. So that I don't care for. I think if we're going to have this plan, we probably should follow it. And quite frankly, I think the wording on this is poorly written. The way I read it, I guess if I go out on the docks and as long as there's nobody else there, I don't have to wear a mask. This is what this is telling me. And to me, that makes no sense. Either you're going to wear a mask on the docks or you're not going to wear a mask on the docks. It's unclear to me if I want to walk out White Shed Road, can I walk out White Shed Road without a mask? Or is there people, if there's people there, but I can keep 20 feet away, you know, all of those little nuances. I just don't, I think for me, the intent would have been the downtown business area, grocery stores, the post office. I think you definitely should be wearing a mask in there, but some of these other areas, I don't think it should need to be required. And again, the process, and that's why I would have loved to have the public input in this. Also in the, as far as the restaurants go, if you look under your position checklist for the pandemic period under command, control, and management, it spells down there, determine when to close and reopen schools, businesses, and other public events if necessary. And under that, the heading, who's responsible for that? It's the policy group. So that kind of speaks to your restaurant. So you definitely would want to get input from your medical team. But again, that brings that into the public forum so everybody can comment on it. And I think when you get the public to comment on things, you get better buy-in and things will go smoothly. So those are my comments. And maybe at some point they can address this, whether we're going to follow this emergency plan or not. So if we're not, then I'm not sure why we're meeting. Thank you.
The medical staff was consulted on the masking, though, and had input to that. So, council, other comments or questions for incident commander?
Yeah, this is Melina.
Councilman Meyer.
I somewhat agree with what Tom is saying about how it's written. I know that I had to read it a couple times to really understand where and where not you have to, where it's mandated. I don't know who wrote it. Maybe it was the attorney. But I think it could have been worded in a way that was a little clearer. I think some of the messaging of educating the public, I think that those messages were a little clearer than how it's written in the mandate. But that was my initial thought on the covering. While I'm very supportive of the mask covering, I think how it was written was a little confusing.
Helen, did you want to comment on who wrote the plan?
Holly's online, and I think she can speak to some of anyone's questions. Holly?
Sure. So the rule was written, Helen and I wrote that together. A lot of the language was my language, and it's very specific language. It's tailored to ensure that your rule does exactly what the CDC allows and recommends and stays very close to that language, and that the rule does not go beyond what is necessary in order to accomplish the goal. So you get language regarding individuals who are with their household members or alone. That language stems from the need to ensure that you are not overly restricting the individual liberties in order to respond to COVID if it's not going to be scientifically based. So the CDC, for example, requires cloth coverings. That's what they recommend. And they recommend cloth coverings for individuals over age 2, so we can expand that to age 4, but we wouldn't want to go under age 2. And the CDC recommends that individuals with trouble breathing and medical conditions are exempt from the rule, and so that language is taken directly from their directives.
Holly, can you also speak to, there's some question about the emergency management plan and the different, how it all works, that there might be some question as to whether or not we are following it appropriately.
No, I think that you are following it appropriately. The emergency operations plan, one of the problems with the emergency operations plan, both the state plan and the local plans, are that they never were designed to respond to continuing and sustained emergency that we have with a pandemic, as opposed to, say, a natural disaster. So when you see references, for example, to the policy group, policy is a term that can mean a lot of different things, right? And if you are devising a plan to respond to, say, an earthquake, your policy group is going to make determinations regarding strategies for rebuilding the community, or do you want to make it look different if half of your streets have been leveled? Do you want to, there's these large, overarching planning concepts that may come into place that will then be taken by your emergency management team that's operating on the ground in real time and incident response, and that would come into play. And you would go through those policies and you would adopt them under your normal course of action. Here, whether you adopt a rule restricting a facial covering that will have immediate impact on the spread of the virus in the city, and therefore an immediate impact on the emergency, that is not necessarily policy. Council still has its long ability. You can still say, you know, the emergency operations team has implemented social distancing restrictions and taken these other steps, but we as council want to communicate with the public and go further. We want to do something else, right? Then you can use your normal course of business to take those steps. And we can create and devise a means for you to do that, perhaps and we anticipated that in your fines, right? So now your fines allow for council mandates. We could create a city council emergency rule that you would adopt for your normal course that would supplement and be incorporated into the mandates adopted by the city manager as the director of the emergency operations team. But when you have these, are restaurants open or are they closed? Do we require 6 feet separation? Do we have quarantine? Can we enforce quarantine? That's all immediate response to the emergency. And that, in my mind, does not fall under policy. That falls under response. So this policy, putting you in a policy bubble on a piece of paper doesn't really tell you anything in reality. It doesn't give you direction as to how the emergency operations team functions. Emergency operations are triggered by an actual emergency, and it's designed to put a single government official at the helm, and in this case you use a unified command, so you have 2, right? You have Mr. Tremblay doing operations, and that's, you know, how many masks do we have, what quarantine locations do we have, how many PPE teams or resources do we have. That's Paul, and what rules we have in place to protect our community right now on the ground. That's Helen, and the team as a whole informs everyone, informs Helen and Paul as they make these leadership decisions. Council stays as an oversight. The rules come before them, not necessarily before they're adopted, but they are there. They're watching, they're being informed. The public has an opportunity to weigh in, but not always before they're adopted, because the adoption is triggered by a state of emergency, so it moves fast. So I know these concepts are hard to understand, and they're very hard to explain telephonically, but I'm hoping that helps. Does that help?
Is there any council comments online before I go back to Councilman Baylor?
Well, yes, this is Helena.
Okay, maybe I should go through the list here. Okay, Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, I understand. I guess I was just trying to just highlight that the rule in the emergency order, like I assumed, I kind of assumed that it was from the attorney, and the language in there, it was a little hard to read. So I was just maybe hoping that when we do put out the public, and it already has from my understanding of seeing it, that it says it in a little bit different wording, so people can see the legal rule of it, but also just like wear a mask, when you need to. In the downtown settings, I would assume that is anywhere where you can't stay at least 6 feet apart, grocery stores, post office, all those settings are very good places and mandated to wear a mask now, or a facial covering. And kind of on the topic of educating the public about cleaning them and keeping them clean is good. I would like us to try to have resources of purchasing masks. I know there's some people in the town that have ordered some manufacturing masks, and those were a way to get some. We have a lot of people in this town sewing masks, but we really need, each person needs to have, I think, at least 2, so you can wash one and also have a dry one ready to wear out in the public. So anything that we can do to get our supply of cloth masks I think would be helpful for this order, so people aren't attacking someone that's not wearing it, because they may have a medical condition where they can't wear a mask. But if we have easy tools for them to get a mask, someone say, hey, do you have a facial covering? Do you need one? Here's some resources to be able to get you one, rather than attacking.
Okay, and there's another councilman trying to jump in there. Is that Councilman Gard?
Allison.
Councilman Ellison.
Yeah, I guess just a general comment regarding all of that stuff. I think the crux of the whole issue is that the council, as part of the policy group, is part of the management team, even though there's no line that directly connects us. We're certainly a box on the chart, and it seems like sometimes various components of us get to feeling like, or it seems like we're not all part of the same team. That it's us competing against you, and we don't want you to find out about this because we're going to do this, and you can find out about it later. And I think we just need to be communicated with all the time. When things are going to go out to the community, we need to be told about it, because we're the first ones that get an email or a call from the public saying, what is council doing? And it wasn't, council didn't have anything at all to do with the decision. So we just need to all remember all the time that we are all part of the same team, and we're part of the town. So let's work together.
Okay, Councilman Gleason.
I guess the only thing I would say is I would like it to have in there that there is a $50 fine also if you get caught without one. And I don't know what the tactics are in there, if there's going to be some warnings or whatever, but I think we should be publishing those with our rule so that people can read everything they need to know. I do like what Councilman Schaefer said, that you need to know that you have to wash that after you use it. And so if that stuff like that was included in that, and they could read it all at once, so, and I think that's kind of what everybody's saying. So that's what I got.
Okay, Councilman Gard.
I think everybody's covered my concerns. Thank you.
Councilman Schaefer.
I don't have any more to add right now. Thank you.
Councilman Sherman.
I think it's good. I think the PIO portion of the IMT can help clarify and get the information out. I think Vice Mayor Meyer had a great point of maybe having a source for making some available other than the ones that are being handmade. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, Councilman Baylor.
Well, I want to thank Holly for clarifying that, because I kind of like to fall back on policy, and there is a Annex L, it's the pandemic influenza, and that's the plan for this happens. I'm assuming they drew this up not expecting it to be over in a week. You mentioned that these are long-term things. So now that I know that this is not a concern of council, we're not going to follow that, I'll put that away and won't have to worry about it. But I'm just curious if you even read it. So we'll move on. And I'm not in support of this ordinance the way it's written. I'm in support of the spirit of it, but I just think it's poorly written and leads to some confusion. It could have done better, but that's just my opinion. Thanks.
And just to clarify, where council fits into this is that I get to make the rules, incident command team, but your role is to repeal them. So if you are unhappy with the rule at any point, including this moment right now, you can say, nope, we're not going to do this at this moment in time. We want an opportunity to make a change. And that is your prerogative as council.
And if I may, the big issue that I have with that is you're taking out the public input part, and we're not in an emergency right now. We're preparing for one, and I think this could have gone through the public, as we were requesting this 2 weeks ago. So, but that's just my feeling. Like I say, I'll put the book away. Thank you.
Anything else?
Mr. Mayor, this is Melina.
Councilman Meyer.
Kind of just going off of what Mr. Baylor just said, I would like a little clarification on the Cordova emergency plan. I would also be curious if Holly has read it, and we have deviated from it a little bit, and there is a section for the pandemic. I know that I've read through it. The beginning part too also applies to the situation because it applies to all emergencies, and there's another section just for a pandemic. And I think there's a lot of really good things in there to prepare for this, and I think we have been following it to some extent and have deviated it in other areas, which I think can be expected in an emergency, but I would like us not to maybe put that book away because it was planning for a pandemic. So some clarification on the Cordova Operation Emergency Plan would be nice to hear from Holly and from the Incident Command Team.
Paul?
Yeah, it's the plan, the EOP is a guide for us. That's what makes us move. And it's really nice to have. No, don't close the book on it. Leave it open and read through it and work through the process. The reason why I did bring up the state mandate being changed on Friday is that our team is actively working on all the mutual aid agreements with all the small businesses and large operations. And we have yet to receive a lot of the local business agreements. And that's one of the processes, and that was put in a rule that they have to agree to our rule. And a lot of the businesses aren't doing that. We haven't received a lot of them. We are actively working on the harbor plans and the boat plans, and we're receiving those from the state. And as the boats come in, we do see those plans and we do see the updates, but it's the local businesses that haven't turned in their plans. So I just wanted to make that aware for the council to understand. And the other reason I bring up the restaurant part and the social distancing is I wanted council to have a little bit of input on that and how that policy looks for us to turn around and put that out to the public as information, and also the enforcement aspect of it. So I'll leave it at that.
Holly?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with the emergency operations plan. I hope I wasn't suggesting you should put it away at all, and I think that's been followed. And there is the pandemic plan appendix or supplement, which from my review appears to be taken from a federal pandemic plan that came out in 2005, which is a great resource in and of itself. And I think the city is following that. It's the reference to the policy group and what that really means that is not detailed or explained in a way that is that helpful to council, because there hasn't been a need and there's a different, and that part is in the, I think it's in the 100 pages of the emergency operation plan, right? It's in the beginning part. So for that reason, that is what I am saying, is they set up a structure and they give you an organization, but they don't give you enough details in the plan to really wrap your arms around what these roles are. And I think part of that is because the plan is, it addresses numerous different types of emergencies. So, but no, you do want to read the plan, be aware of the plan, and I think it'll bring you comfort to see how well your team is following it.
Okay. Any other final questions for your incident commander or the incident management team report? Okay, hearing none, do we have a CCMC Authority Board?
Yes. Can you hear me, Clay?
Yeah, we have you on the agenda for a report here.
Okay, great. Hopefully I won't take too long. The staff has been busy trying to get equipment and PPE supplies and try to prepare for this new world we're entering. And just want to let everyone know, and I'm sure council is aware, that we've got an old facility that needs a lot of tending to, and just to prepare for something like this is a bit overwhelming, and our wants and needs and list is pretty big, about $1 million. And some of the things on this list, we can get by with and don't really need. But just to let you know, just one item on here that came to my attention, it's $43,000 for a call system. So I asked about that. So in your room, if you're a patient and you need something, you press a button and it goes to the nurse's desk and it alerts them that you need something. Well, our system is down, and we're essentially using cowbells. They're ringing a bell, and then people are hearing the bell and coming to it. But that's just one example of our facility is in need of some equipment, and we are out getting donation and fundraising. In fact, just a few minutes ago, I got a $20,000 donation from Copper River Seafoods, and which is nice. And of course, we got the Eyak Corporation donation, and we're working with the NVE to do the purchasing on that. We received a Murdoch grant for $50,000, state grant for $90,000, Alaska community fund for $20,000. We're going for a $100,000 USAC grant for IT and telemedicine, and then a Rasmussen grant for $50,000 to $100,000. We're hoping to get some of that, and FEMA monies too. And good news on the SBA PPP grant. We're supposed to get $1.154 million deposited into our account today. So that's going to help us immensely. And then another thing to keep in mind, our revenue is this month is down about 15%, and I assume it's probably going to go down this summer. People aren't coming in for elective stuff, and anyway, that's just part of dealing with what's going on. We're not the only one experiencing lower volumes in traditional medicine. So anyway, we're working on trying to get money and trying to get the facility prepared. So that's all I've got. Got some questions.
Thank you, Chairman Meyer. Any questions, Council? I'll just use an open format if any of you have a question. Okay, thank you, Greg. Sorry. Okay, Councilman Meyer and then Baylor.
I just wanted to ask a little bit about the grant, excuse me, the SBA loan that you got, and what can that be used for? Because I think there's some speculations on what you can use it for, and then,
Yeah, we're getting the, I want to see it in writing before we start using it. But basically, it's a loan, 1% loan, 2-year loan. But if you use it for payroll, rent, utilities, specific needs, it'll be forgiven. So it'll turn into a grant. And we need labor is one of them. You have to spend 75% of it on labor, which for us that's easy. And then you can spend another 25% on other things if you want, or you can put it all into labor. We're not going to have any problem at all qualifying for this. We, our payroll is $300,000-400,000 a month. So this will be welcome money.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Greg, for what you're doing behind the scenes there. That's outstanding. And you get some great results. And then I'm hoping at some point we can address the issue of the testing cost. I think we should be able to figure out a way for those that can't afford the testing, that we can maybe swing that somehow between the hospital and the city. So thanks for everything you do.
You bet. I agree on that too. So we'll work on that. And thanks.
Other questions, council? Okay, thank you, Chairman Meyer. Appreciate you calling in. Do we have a school board online? Alex or Barb? Okay, hearing none. We have an audience line set up?
Yeah.
Okay, we do have an audience line set up. That number again is 424-6202. I'm sorry, 253-6202. And you'll go to on hold. And then as we pick up, remember to mute your YouTube in the background, please.
No? Yes.
Okay, you're online. If you could state your name for the record.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay. This is Kathy Rentfeld. I'm calling on behalf of the Cordova Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank the IMP and the City Council for the roles that you both play in managing this crisis and trying to keep our community moving in this unprecedented time. As the voice of the business community, I just want to urge you that whatever decision is made by council or the IMP regarding the reopening of business is made soon, and that language is clearly communicated to the business community, and the chamber is here to help as a vehicle for that message.
Okay, thank you. If that's all, Kathy, if you can hang up, then it'll allow other callers to call in. That number again is 253-6202 for audience comments. Okay, you're online now. If you could turn YouTube off and state your name for the record, please, and you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, this is Carl Becker. I'd like to read my letter that I sent to you. I had a couple of additions. Thank you all for your hard work and for this opportunity to express my views with the goal of protecting our community from the unfortunate consequences of exposure to COVID-19. I appreciate that you and other residents may have already raised these issues. Again, thank you. I think that we can compare our town to a cruise ship. The close proximity of people in the fishing industry, fishers or cannery workers, can lead to a widespread contamination by one case of COVID-19. Remember, this is not the flu. It is 10 to 20 times more deadly and doesn't respect age. People can be infected and contagious without knowing it. Most ICU patients on ventilators die. Survivors of COVID-19 can face a lifetime of complications such as scarred lungs and damaged kidneys. Are we ready to allow ourselves, our families, our friends, visitors, medical providers, merchants, seasonal workers, and fishers to risk this outcome? I'm not. We should take steps to avoid these outcomes. These would be a start. 1, businesses, agencies, and medical facilities in town must ensure that everyone wear a mask before entering the premises. Wearing a mask in public spaces is a matter of personal responsibility and public safety. When we enter a business wearing a mask, we are showing respect and concern for the people serving us by protecting them if we happen to be infected. 2, we must adopt a zero-tolerance policy toward any case of COVID-19. If one case appears, fishing must be suspended pending testing and contact tracing to determine if there are any other infected individuals. The testing must be free if it is to work. The fleeting canneries must act responsibly to help us prevent any case of the disease. While unpleasant, there are precedents for interrupting fishing, including strikes and the oil spill. representatives of our city government should contact the agencies responsible for the fisheries to implement this policy. 3, all returning members of the fishing and processing community must quarantine for 14 days. A separate area of the harbor must be set aside for fishers quarantining on board their boats. 4, the recommendations must be enforceable. 5, we can use the Wednesday tsunami warning test to remind people of the city guidelines to prevent any further COVID-19 cases. And 6, we should remember to socially distance, wear masks, wash our hands, and don't touch our faces. Thank you for the opportunity to weigh in with these suggestions. If we do the right things, we can make it through the fishing season unscathed by this terrible disease. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Becker. And I'll have to admit, I forgot to start my stopwatch, and if you got more than 3 minutes, it wasn't intentional. So we appreciate your written comments as well in the record.
Yeah, I think I got those under 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Okay, caller, if you can state your name for the record and 3 minutes.
Yeah, hi, Bob Smith, 702 Lake Avenue. I listened to the workshop and I listened to the rule that you guys the rule doesn't make any sense. I'm totally in favor of mandatory mask wearing in the business district or high traffic areas and make it enforceable. This one, I don't see what you can even do with it. Of the 5 cases that I'm tracking on the quarantine, we've got to make this quarantine real. Not one single individual has ever been followed up on to see if they need help getting groceries or if they're observing the quarantine. Yes, and as far as the harbor goes, I know you guys got a letter from the Coast Guard saying that they are prepared to help. And, I got boarded by the Coast Guard 10 times last year. They told me to get a life raft. You know what I did? I got a life raft. So we need to start using our resources and make this quarantine as good as we can possibly make it, because I don't see anything happening with it now. Thank you. I'm out.
Thank you. Caller, you're online. If you could state your name for the record and 3 minutes.
Hello, this is William Deaton. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Wonderful. I'm calling about the restaurants opening up. I know that's not on the agenda. Is that all right if I speak about that at this time?
Yes, it's audience comments.
Okay. I don't see the argument that we have a bunch of people coming into our community so we can't open our restaurant. We already have a 14-day quarantine required for all people coming in. Even if you're an essential worker, you must quarantine when you are not working. So I don't see that argument. I think that the restaurants can open up. I don't see why they can't. If they cannot open up, I think that we should see why they cannot. And the argument that those people coming into town, the commercial fishermen, the cannery workers, they're going to be under quarantine for 14 days. So I don't see why they can't open up. I know I repeated myself there a few times, but that's my comment. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And just for clarification, that item wasn't specifically on the agenda, but council did amend the agenda to include a COVID-19 policy discussion, and that was one of the items that came up earlier in the conversation. So we don't have any callers online, but Dr. Sanders, are you still online? Okay, I was going to read her letter into the record as part of the audience comments because council had requested, I think, in the last meeting there. So this is her medical update as of April 15th. Dear Cordova, I wanted to take a moment to update you on the medical preparations for the potential outbreak of COVID-19 in our community. CCMC and Eyak have been working collaboratively to provide the best medical response possible for Cordova. We've provided input to the incident management team on recommendations for processors and fishermen to reduce the likelihood of COVID-19 in Cordova, and if it does occur, to limit its impact. We've obtained testing equipment and treatment supplies at both Eyak and CCMC to be ready if cases do occur. We now have rapid testing available at both Elanca and CCMC. The rapid testing is not approved as a test to screen healthy individuals. The test is used for people with COVID-19 symptoms. Test supplies are limited, so we will need to be judicious in who we test. We'll continue to follow the Alaska Department of Health testing guidelines. We're developing and implementing treatment protocols to include quarantine and medical plans. We have bolstered our oxygen supply. We are looking at emergency staffing needs and backup plans, coordinating with all healthcare staff at Elanca and CCMC. Although we have not had positive tests to date, it does not mean that there is no virus in town. Many people, particularly young people, do not have symptoms but can still pass the virus on to others. In this light, you can help stop the spread of the virus by assuming it is present and taking appropriate precautions. These include wearing a mask in public, frequent hand washing, and maintaining social distancing when out. The disease attacks the elderly and those with existing medical problems harder than others. Please assist your friends and neighbors with those issues by doing their shopping and errands for them. Finally, if you know people coming into the town this spring or summer, for whatever reason, encourage them to follow the 14-day quarantine and not leave their residence to go out to stores or common places. Please continue to follow Cordova mandates and guidelines. We thank you for your support during this crisis. Best, Hannah Sanders, MD. Okay, Council, let me get back on my agenda here. We didn't have any other more audience participation, so that was audience comments regarding agenda items. We have reports of officers. I don't have anything to add as mayor's report. I think I did my updates in the course of the discussion. Manager's report.
I have a couple of things. Obviously, we have a new mask rule that went into effect, and I just want to make sure we're all still comfortable with that rule at the moment. If there's any council action that needs to take place, it goes into effect tomorrow morning, so would love for that conversation to come up and just really understand direction there. The governor made new rules last night, which are relaxing the opportunity to eat in restaurants and other things. And as we discussed earlier, we're going to keep the course that we have here. We're going to have to modify a few things because our mandates say we are going to follow the state mandates, and obviously the state mandate is not what we want to do, at least in those instances. So we'll get that figured out. And there's going to be a new fisherman's rule that's going to come out, mandate probably today, maybe tomorrow, and it will change some of the rules about how fishermen engage in our community on their vessels. And so we're waiting on that. And with any luck, hopefully most of the governor's mandates are now going to be on the table, and we'll have a little breathing room to really solidify all of the things that we're trying to accomplish. Because needless to say, whenever there's a new mandate, it causes a bit of a disruption in how we are approaching things. So just so the community knows, we are responding to state mandates which take priority over what we do here. Only insofar as if we don't follow the mandates, state mandates, as a small community, we can make adjustments, but we have to make those adjustments, otherwise the state mandate rules. So we're working fast to try to make sure we have everything in place there. Non-COVID related news. I actually have something to report. I'm very excited to say. Two things. The harbor, we are submitting a build grant to the federal government. It's going to be a $25 million grant to hopefully redo this entire harbor here. We submitted last year. We weren't successful, but if at first you don't succeed, try again is our mantra. And we're strengthening that document, and it'll be submitted within the month. And the only other thing I want to draw your attention to, which is COVID related, I guess, we are getting a distribution through the CARES Act of about $3.4 million. It's been announced. We haven't gotten any of the documentation indicating how we can spend those resources, but that will be a council action and decision in the future. But it is good news, gives us a sense that if our fish tax revenue doesn't come in as we expected, or sales tax revenue doesn't come in as we expected, or we have additional costs related to COVID, that we have some resources to cover that. So with that, I am done.
Are there any questions, council?
Yeah, Clay, this is Councilman Gleason.
Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I also listened to Dunleavy's press conference. He did say that small communities can do what they want in that. Are you saying that we have to have something sorted out before Friday?
Well,
or we have to follow the mandate?
Right. So, and it's going to be a simple language change in some of the things. Holly's working on it now, but we're waiting for the final language from the state. So he made an announcement. He generally spoke about certain things, but we're waiting for the document that says this is what we're doing, and then we'll figure out how it integrates with what we already have in play. As I say, some of the mandates that we have basically said we're going to follow state rule. So state rule changes, state law changes. If we want something different, we have to articulate what that something different is and make sure it's clear in our rules.
Okay, and then the other thing is, are we going to be setting a meeting up either tomorrow or the next day to discuss the face fasting, because it has to be on an agenda, and it has to be, public has to have a chance to weigh in on that. So
as it stands now, this is a rule that I am putting in place with the incident management team. It will go into effect tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. If you don't want that rule to go into effect, you can repeal it today, and then we can put it on the agenda for discussion for next week, or if you want to do another special session around it. If you want it to be, if you want me to modify the rule, you can give direction to that, and you don't have to go through the public process that council normally does. But if you want council feedback, community feedback on it, it probably would be best to just let it go on next Wednesday's special session meeting for council approval. We can put out, we can have a work session with direction if you want, and we can put that forward, and you'll have opportunity for public feedback, and then take action next Wednesday.
Okay, yeah, that sounds fair enough. And in the meantime, it'll be implemented tomorrow, and I don't think it's going to do any harm to have it implemented tomorrow, as long as if we can come up with maybe a little bit better wording, just so everybody understands it. And
so again, the rule is presented to follow the legal guidelines. It mirrors the rule that is in Seward and other communities. So, but if you feel like it's unclear, we can communicate it in a different way. We can say, you have to wear masks on the docks at all times, instead of if you're on the ramps and this and that. We can be clearer without breaking or changing the rules. So if it's really about how we communicate it, that's different than the intent or what the rule says. So let's make sure that if it's strictly a matter of communication, that's easily solved. If it's the rule itself that it doesn't go far enough or it goes too far, we can make a change, and that's your prerogative as council.
Okay, thanks, Bill.
Other questions, council?
I had one quick one.
Councilman Garden.
Yeah, you just stated that we were getting about $3.5 million as a city, and Greg had talked earlier about the hospital getting 1.5. Are these two separate pots of money, or is the 1.5 the hospital's getting included in that 3.5?
Two separate.
City getting?
Two separate.
Thank you.
Councilman Baylor.
So in regards to the restaurants, I would encourage you to maybe contact the restaurant owners. You know, we only have a few of them here, and even if the governor said so, it's not likely that they're going to run out the next day and open up their bars. But have a discussion with them, and there may be a way that they can open up their doors in some fashion. Like I said, outdoor eating, and that's something you'll have to run by the medical team, but from what I've been reading, outdoor eating is fairly safe. Maybe they can come up with a plan to keep their doors open, keep a little income coming for them, and safely do this. If not, then, you know, that's the way it goes. But I think these people should have a little bit of input and say, and if maybe they can serve the public in a safe manner. You know, we have a lot of pop-up restaurants, wagons, whatever you want to call them, coming, and that it would be a simple matter of keeping 6 foot away from the person standing in front of you, and whether they can eat outdoors. So I would encourage you to at least talk with the restaurant owners, and I think it's always best, all of these things, mask and this, it should go out for public input. We're not in a we have to act now mode right now. We just have to plan and keep things moving forward, and we're meeting once a week. So thanks.
Other questions or comments, council? Of the manager? Okay, city attorney report, Holly.
First, one thing I'd like to emphasize. I hear council talking a lot about some very good ideas, some very important ideas about how you want to restrict access or not, and can always take another mechanism as a policy group, but also just as city council. One of the approaches I've taken in some communities is we have adopted ordinances that implement council rules and also incorporate comments that are also published alongside those rules. Sometimes, for example, if you're going to close an entire, let's say you were going to prohibit hair salons. We didn't have to go there before because we followed the state's rules. Now, when you're looking at things like that, if you want to go there as a council, that's a very appropriate discussion for council to have, and it's a very appropriate area for you to. You just would not be using the same emergency rule procedure the city manager and the emergency response team uses. You would use a resolution or an ordinance, depending on what you wanted to do for enforcement. So I want to throw that out there because I feel like I don't want council to feel stifled. It's important that you know you have this tool and that you can engage in that conversation and make those rules if you decide you want to do that. So I just want to make sure that that's clear for all of the council members.
So Holly, I have a concern because we're 2.5 hours into a council meeting. The incident management team only met for an hour this morning to go through all the business and things they had to work on. They've got lots of information. For instance, airport traffic is increasing sharply this week. So that makes a mask ordinance, in fact, very timely right now and important. But all those little nuances that go into the decision-making on the incident management team on the council side, I'm just trying to reconcile what the roles are. And I think I heard you saying earlier that council can add to something, but if council, for example, wants to overturn that, then that's a mask rule. Then they can do that as part of the regular process or as part of that five-day response.
I mean, I think of it. Your emergency team has to be able to move quickly, and it would be very damaging for the city if city council could slow that movement. But the city council doesn't necessarily have all of the pieces of information, like you're saying, that go into those decisions. Those decisions are required to be necessary to protect the city from the city's health, safety, and welfare. So they are operating in that way, and there are these mechanisms for them to do it quickly. So that's one line of action, right? And so that is why the city manager and the incident management team adopt rules, and council has a chance to say, whoa, we don't like that one. The council move regular speed. So council does not, now it may do an emergency ordinance, but it will still stay within the confines unless it really has to, right, of the timing and the public notice and the public process that it usually adheres to under the Open Meetings Act and other laws. So what that means is if council wants to engage in this discussion, if they want to weigh in, or if there's a matter that has such a significant impact on public due process rights or their liberty interests or economy, you know, and it's a very important piece, then council can go through that using their own rulemaking authority. But we don't want to, what we don't want to do is confuse council's role with the incident management team's role, because council will move at a slower pace, and the emergency management team needs to be able to move as quickly as possible. So the mask rule generally could go into place immediately, because every time someone puts on a mask, perhaps that's one less person that gets infected, right? Or in at the middle of everything is urgent. But so, you know, as a matter of policy, when we're looking at this, as a matter of general ethics and culture, we don't want to do that. We don't want to require masks, or we want to have it sound different. We want it to be a simpler rule or a broader rule or whatever the scope may be. In that sense, council doesn't amend rules that the city manager puts in place, because there needs to be control from the incident management team over the scope of those rules. But they can repeal it, and council can come up with its own rule if it wants to. And what we would then have for the city is, here are the council and city and emergency operating team rules and procedures. And they're posted, they're both available, and they work in harmony together, just like you have statutes for the state of Alaska and regulations, right?
Okay.
So they work together. Yes.
Okay. Let me go through the roll here. Councilman Gleason, was that you?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
I wanted to say to Holly that, you know, none of us want to eliminate having a face mask rule. I think everybody's pretty much on board with that. If this had actually been on the agenda today, it probably would have solved a whole bunch of issues. So our problem is, you know, we have to set up meetings every time we need to change something or add something or whatever. We have to set up another meeting. We have to publicly notice it. It could have been solved by having this as an agenda item. So I do think that this, even though this is a rule that Helen's allowed to make, it still impacts the public in a huge way, and it's a huge step in making the public safer. So it's a big deal to me that it wasn't on the agenda, and I think that stuff like that needs to be on the agenda so that we can make, you know, have discussion and possibly change some stuff and keep things going rapidly, but doing it in a smart way. If that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think you can do that. I mean, one of the directives you can suggest to the city manager, the operations team, that when there is a rule that can be put before council prior to adoption, that those rules come to council for repeal prior to enactment. And I think so long as you don't demand that, for lack of a better term, so that they maintain that fluidity and flexibility for the rules they really do need to enact immediately and swiftly, I think that sounds like a great policy. I think that would be fine.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Councilman Ellison for attorney.
I got nothing for all.
Okay. Councilman Sherman?
No questions. Thank you, Holly.
Councilman Meyer?
No questions. Thank you, Holly.
Councilman Guard?
Yeah, there's no reason that this enactment of the face mask rule today by management team at all impacts the regular input we can have on it. If there are things that need to happen rapidly, they can happen. If we want to sit down and discuss them in a public forum and get all the input we need to modify or repeal or add to or do whatever we need to do, that's fine. One's not exclusive of the other, so there's no reason that the rule shouldn't go into effect as written. I don't think it does any damage, and we're fine. So that was my only comment on that.
Okay, Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, I think just for clarification, the mayor spoke that, but actually, I think Councilman Gleason brought this issue up 2 or 3 meetings ago that we need to, actually tried to get it on the agenda, the whole mask thing, because I think all of council realized that that was a direction we needed to get to, and we were hoping to get it on the agenda and run this through the public. So we did ask for that, or I shouldn't say we, Councilman Allison, or Gleason did ask for that. I don't know, the city clerk can remind me, but it was a couple meetings ago. So it's not like we're like, oh, shoot, we got to get this today. We were trying to get this well over a week ago. But again, I just reiterate, I think if you have to move fast, you move fast. But if not, it's always best to get 7 people in the community looking at these things. So I support the mask. I don't think it's written very clearly, but we'll move forward from here.
Hey, Councilman Schaefer?
I don't have any comments right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Holly.
Thank you.
So we have correspondence in the packet. Is there any council comments on correspondence? I'll just leave it open.
Other than the fact that if they're not signed, I just delete. So I appreciate the letters that come in and people do sign them.
Other comments on correspondence, council? Okay, so we'd amended the agenda to include item 12A, which is a discussion on COVID-19 policy. Did I get that right, Councilman Meyer?
Yeah, and I was going to go ahead and talk since I asked for this to be on there. I know that we had a lot of discussion throughout the port and the joint meeting that we had with NVE already, but I think that this, just moving forward, that it's really good to have this as a placeholder for council to be able to bring up any other concerns or ideas. Kind of like when Baylor was talking about the mask thing had been brought up, but maybe if we had this item on our agenda, then we could have got currents on it, put it on the agenda or whatever that we needed to do. Just wanted to bring up too is the kind of coming from the work session about hiring some more people, community safety officers, or sorry if I messed with the name, I should write it down. But I think that would be a good direction for us to go in, and if policy needs to be brought to us or if council needs to bring up the policy on the increased budget for these temporary workers, I would like to see that sooner rather than later.
Okay, Councilman Allison?
Yeah, same thing I had said before. I guess I think the sooner we can get to having the same rules as the state has, the easier it is for everybody to understand. It's not just for restaurants; it's other businesses too that are shut down that can put in adequate safeties. This mask thing is not an emergency by any stretch. We may have a bunch of people coming into the airport this week, but all of those are 14-day quarantine right away. So I think you're going to get a lot of people that have PTSD or or whatever they're going to say they do, if they get busted for not wearing a face mask, they're going to have some medical excuse for not wearing it. So it's going to be awful hard to police. The people that are going to do it are going to do it. The people that aren't are going to have contaminated masks anyway. So I just disagree with that policy, but I'm in the minority here, so I'll go along with whatever the majority of the council says there. But I think as soon as we can get to the same rules as the state has, the easier it's going to be for everybody. So that's where I'm at right now.
Councilman Baylor? Councilman Sherman?
I having such a hard time with all of this. I guess I'm okay with the mask ruling, and I would like to see. I don't know if we're going into tactics or whatever, but if there is a budget issue or something that needs to happen for the community service officers to get into place as soon as possible, I think that would be good, and I think they should be useful to watch for quarantine, to walk in the harbor, to be at the airport, to be walking the streets of town. So again, I say as many as possible. And if I'm following the process right, and we're going to be deliberating or discussing whether or not to remain status quo on the restaurants and other community businesses, is that something that council can discuss at next week's meeting, so that there could potentially be, again, public comment? And if the rules already in place, like this week's case, can we make sure it's on the agenda for next week? That's all I have right now.
Okay, Councilman Gleason.
Well, I feel like we're waiting a long time meeting next Wednesday, but it's not. I wonder. I would love to hear from the restaurant owners and other businesses, non-essential businesses that would be opening up, on what their opinions are of that. I'm not a big fan of foot traffic in the grocery stores or any other store for that matter, because I do think that there's a big danger of, it's spreading, like especially with incoming fishermen. And so most people are asymptomatic and they don't even know they got it. They could spread it just as bad as people that actually are sick. So the other thing I'm concerned about is our 14-day quarantine process, whether it's in the harbor or on their boat somewhere else. How do we know we're going to have flagging in the harbor, but do we check on those people? Do we say this is when your day starts and you have to do this until this 2 weeks later, and if we catch you, running around doing other stuff, then you're in trouble? I mean, how does that work? And that's, I'm sure, in the tactic area, but it's a big concern that people are asking me. So I may get reprimanded for bringing that up, but I'm just saying that's the question I'm getting asked, and I don't have an answer. So maybe Paul can speak about that, and that's all I got.
I think Helen can speak to that.
Just two points. I will agree that there is not a plan in place or enforcement in place to identify people when they come into town, the exact date, and when they are out of quarantine. I'm speaking specifically of people arriving and living in Cordova. So you come back from a vacation, you're coming to town, you're living in our community, in your own home, wherever. The harbor is a different story. People are going to know when the boats arrive in town. They're going to check in. They're going to check in either with police dispatch or with the harbor master, and that information will be collected. The harbor will put in place quarantine flags on those vessels that are in quarantine status. And what I have been led to believe, and I'm sure it's true for those of you who are fisher folk, that most people are going to get in town, get themselves on their boats, get them loaded up, and they're going to get out and they're going to start fishing, and they won't be in the harbor for 14 days. So that is what we're expecting will happen in reality. But the fact of the matter is when you come into town, if you're driving your boat in or if you're working on your vessel, harbor master and his crew will be walking the docks regularly, identifying the boats that are new to the harbor or individuals that are new into the harbor whose boats are getting activated, and flag them. So we will have a very close knowledge of that when the quarantine starts and when the 14 days is up. As far as the rest of the community, yeah, don't really have a way of tracking that.
So just to be clear, that's for residents coming back, say through the airport, but anybody coming into the airport for fishing and whatnot, they're filing those forms. We're collecting those. Please have those on file so they know when that 14-day quarantine starts.
Right, but we don't have a way of, we're not tracking their movement in town.
Yeah, no, we're not hounding them.
Yeah, right. The harbor's a different story. We can keep track of that better because it's a contained space, and we know the vessels and the folks that are working on them.
Mm-hmm. So does that help, Councilman Layson?
Yeah, I'm glad that I'm just glad that she has an answer for the public, because I get a lot of calls about that. So hopefully that is a good enough answer for most people.
And can I just speak to one more thing about the harbor? With snowpocalypse and any of these big events, when you have snow piles and big heavy equipment, you can see the response. And I think what people are waiting for in the harbor is to see bright red signs, yellow flags, hand washing sinks. All of that stuff is going to be put into play in the coming week. There's a lot of things that are happening. Signs are being made. Things have been ordered, and we're really close to having a visible response in the harbor for those people in the community that have been waiting for it. It has not been that we aren't doing. It's just that things have not yet arrived or gotten in play, but they're well underway.
Councilman Guard, Schaefer, then Baylor.
Yeah, I have no comment at this time.
Councilman Schaefer?
Yes, thank you. I would also, like to see if anything needs to come before us to get those community safety officers hired. I'd like to see that as soon as possible. And again, this might be getting too into the weeds, but the safety officers, in addition to trying to enforce the different mandates, could also serve as public information officers, have information for answer questions to the public when they're out and about, have masks to give out if they're needed, and they might be able to help in the harbor, like with some of the quarantine, keeping track of who's moving where. I'm just saying, if we are hiring this group of people, we should put them to use wherever we need the extra hands. So as many as we need. And then as a policy standpoint, I'd also like to continue pursuing testing as an option. I mean, I know we got the rundown from Dr. Sanders today that some of the tests aren't appropriate for Cordova at this time, but just keep that avenue open as new tests become available or as different options become available to us. And continue to increase public information and education. I think it'd be great, like Helen was saying, people are waiting to see the visual response, and so signs everywhere with the different mandates and reminders about quarantine and social distancing, I think would be good. And I'm I'm in support of continuing as we are in terms of businesses staying open, although I do agree that it wouldn't hurt to have a conversation with local businesses and to see if they could operate, how they could operate differently if we were to sort of gradually open. But as it's come up before, like we haven't even begun to have to deal with this issue yet. You know, we don't have the influx of people in town yet. And so we're still preparing, and it seems counterproductive to be easing mandates before we've even had to deal with the problem. So I think it's in everyone's best interest to continue as we have. If it starts spreading in the community, the more people moving out and about, it's going to spread faster, and that will affect the fishery, you know, for the rest of the state. So I think it's in everyone's best interest to continue as we are in terms of the businesses being open. And that's what I got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, I guess that Councilman Schaefer's comments is exactly why I think this should be a public forum to discuss that. There was a lot of information there, and the public should weigh in on it. So, Mayor, I guess I would recommend that you kind of summarize this meeting. There's been a lot thrown out here. I think direction or suggestion, how you want to put it, about enforcement was there. I would like to hear that what message the incident command team has heard, so they know their marching orders, or if we got any, because sometimes we say we're waiting on this, and is the manager clear of any direction or suggestions that we gave before we walk out of this meeting, so everybody understands kind of what we're talking, because a lot of information was talked about.
Yeah, so I think I heard from and correct me or fill in the blanks, I'll just make a list here. I think I heard a policy direction from council to enforce the rules and mandates. And the general shape of that is use the resources. If you need to hire additional part-time staff, then, you know, don't wait for council to give you, you know. So anyway, that's what I heard is if you can go ahead and start enforcement in general and look at that option of bringing on part-time help to execute that. And don't worry, you know, we're in a position to approve that, or we want to approve that and make that happen. So during the discussion with the tribal council, I think we clarified the legal questions, and kind of holding pattern there was really around the airport access, and that's fairly clear. But then it comes down to policy direction is for the tribe and city to work together to not duplicate efforts, and to look at the incident management team structure to proactively and actively fill those positions and incorporate Native Village of Eyak staff where appropriate, and provide the training or proactively work towards training those people. I heard on the pending agenda, and we're getting to that soon, that, and you can discuss that on pending agenda, but to include this COVID-19 policy discussion on the future special agendas. On the state mandates, relaxed state mandates, restaurants being one of those, I think, to have a discussion or try to work with our local restaurants to see what that might look like. I'm just going to mention that part of the problem is there's so many rules and mandates, and communicating those details to the public and what is and isn't. And I really encourage council and the community to look at the new website, because the infographics and the plain, simple presentation of those things really help. But for example, right now, there's nothing in the mandate, from my understanding, that somebody can't order out from a restaurant, walk right around to the picnic table and sit there and eat it, because they're obeying the social distancing rules and so forth. It's dine-in that isn't allowed. So there's things right now that are already allowed if you want to buy something at Baja Taco and go sit at a picnic table. As long as you are social distancing and following the rest of the rules, there's nothing that prevents that right now. So it's hard for all of us as a team to, process and manage all this on, on a time scale. But that's what I heard, is to put the restaurant as one. I was thinking of putting that as one of the policy items, actually, as the governor's mandates that are relaxed and our response to those. By the time that happens, I think we'll still be within the 5-day window for council at Wednesday's meeting to repeal anything that the manager puts in place. I think I heard from Holly that the council couldn't put a wrapper on that to say, hey, here's this rule, an emergency rule. Council is just going to clarify and have this policy wrapper around it that, these additional stipulations. And
Mayor Copeland, can Holly explain the 5 days? I thought I had 5 days to get you a new rule that was put in. I didn't know that meant you.
I think that's correct. Within 5 days, council had to be notified of a new rule, and then they can follow their policy schedule. Is that correct, Holly?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks for that
Remember,
clarification.
Council can also, so the rule will get put into play. Council can then say, okay, we have these rules. We want to come up with a more global, comprehensive plan. And we have these rules that are governing conduct right now, so we are acting now. But we want to do something, and we're going to take a little time to do it. This pandemic might last. It may last a very long time. We don't know. And so if council wants to do that, then that is sort of a different train. So it's beyond a policy wrapper. So they can do more. Council can do more than just, so their role with the rules is simply to repeal it in that 5 day, when that 5 day period is up, Susan has 5 days, and if that you want to repeal it, you can, and that's a check and balance on your emergency management team, right? But you also have your role as the city council, which is what do we want to do as a community, and then the incident management team can react to those rules if it's necessary, or they can just be harmonious with what's been adopted. And we can structure that. We can, and if this is confusing, if I'm confusing you and not clarifying, we can put an ordinance in front of you, or a resolution even, and what will determine what it should be is the nature of the rights you're impacting. So if you're doing something very substantive that's going to have a very large impact, then I like to see that in an emergency ordinance because it has a public hearing. And that's the difference. That's when we use one rather than the other in this particular arena. But we can put one of those on your next meeting so that you can practice, so that you can see if that works, if you feel like that is a better tool to governing the pandemic in the long term in a way where council and the public are really engaged and involved. That is something we can do.
Okay.
Can I suggest?
Yeah, Susan.
So maybe we're meeting every Wednesday. Whatever has been put in place by that Wednesday meeting, let them ratify that entire set of rules that exist at that time. They may change by the next Wednesday, and we'll do it again. And if any of them were to want to repeal anything that were put in between that week, what is their way to do that? Because how would I hear to call a special meeting? I need 4 of them, which means at a meeting, 4 of them agree to a special meeting. So how would they repeal something within the week to week schedule?
Well, I think if that happened, I would presume it would be an extreme emergency, that the management team has done something that council is just completely opposed to, right? Or something that has immediate detrimental impact that can't be undone. And so I presume that's not going to happen, honestly. Your emergency team is put together in a way that it has its own checks and balances, and they're making rules often with the directive of council, but if that happens, then we would use this. That's why we have the emergency meeting trigger. So we would use that if that were to occur.
Yeah.
But right now, I think the rule goes into place. The council reviews it at the next meeting. They can repeal any rule that they don't agree with, and that permits and protects the integrity of the emergency response system as anticipated by the state. And that's what you see happening with with other communities as well as, and the state structure is a bit like that. The legislature does make determinations that would impact the governor's determinations, but they pretty much tried to stay away from that. But they did have a Senate bill come out that had some of those impacts recently. So it's the same structure. You have two trains.
Yeah.
The emergency management team train, and that stays and maintains its integrity, and then you have council. So I'm hoping that you are understanding that, because I don't want you to feel like you are not governing to the greatest extent possible, or that you want to, right? You want to make sure that you don't feel stifled in any way.
And I would just add, too, that the agenda process works as well for special meetings. It kind of fell through the cracks a couple of weeks ago because Councilman Glazen had called me and asked me to put the mask thing on there. I forgot about it. We were going to ask council to amend the agenda, and frankly, it just got away from us. So that was an anomaly, I think. But two councilmen or myself or Helen, and I think it seems like we're making a lot of sausage, but the working relationship here is really good. I mean, council, Helen put the emergency rule in place on finances. Council said, hey, we don't really like that one. She could have said then, then do your policy thing and have an ordinance to overturn it. But I think it's a good working relationship. And so I think a better way to articulate what I was trying to say about the enforcement, what I heard from council was we want to see more enforcement. One of the tools that might work really well for you is these part-time employees that you had before doing kind of enforcement type roles. Don't wait for us from policy direction to do that. Go ahead and put that in place if you want to. And then there's that check and balance in place if council comes back and says, well, we really didn't like where you went with that. So that's what I heard on that. And I also heard from council that they want to see very visible communication and implementation of these plans and whatnot. And I think you just heard from Helen, and I've seen some of those draft signs, and they do include things like the signage and whatnot are mentioned on them. The volunteers and people at the airport are wearing fire department vests, so they are very visible, as Councilman Meyer suggested. But that's what I heard. And then amend this or include on this future agendas this policy discussion, specifically the governor's overturned mandates for next meeting. Helen.
Hi, I'm still slightly unclear. Maybe just bear with me here for just a second. So at this point in time, as it stands, the emergency rule that got put in place for the mask goes into effect tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. We're still doing that and then revisiting it next week at the council meeting. Is that correct? Or did you want to, are you wanting to repeal it today and then revisit and put a new rule in place next week? It doesn't matter to me, I just don't understand.
They can't repeal it today without a resolution on the agenda to.
It's not on the agenda.
Okay, there we go. So it will go into effect tomorrow and you guys can discuss next week. Okay, then the only other thing, which I believe, unless there's direction otherwise from council, our rules will be in conflict with the state.
As soon as he puts out his.
As soon as he puts out his rules, and if they go into effect on Friday, basically it says that restaurants could open and these sorts of things could happen. So I would like to put in place, again, we're awaiting the announcement from the governor, the actual mandate from the governor, but we would need to put in place something that says, okay, but we don't want our restaurants to open right now. We don't want our hair salons to open right now and these sorts of things. I can prepare that and make sure it's in play for Friday when the state rule goes into effect, or by default, the state rule will go into effect on Friday if we don't have something to supplant it. And then you guys could have this discussion again next Wednesday, so it'd be a 5-day gap. So I don't know how you guys want to proceed.
Well, but then the incident management team has said we want these rules that are in place to protect the public.
Right, but I'm hearing that there might be some conversation around, I mean, I'm fully prepared to do that, is to put something in place, get the language right so that we're not in conflict with the state.
I just want to make sure council understands the implications there. Yeah, Councilman Baylor.
I don't know, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but my opinion is, yeah, you keep the rules in place that we have. The 5 days isn't going to make a difference. Then we have the discussion, and at that time, hopefully we can have input from our medical team and say, well, no, this is ridiculous. You can't eat outside, or there is a way to work around it. We've had a discussion with people who own the businesses. I think that's the course that I was thinking of, is getting input from everybody, the community, restaurants. So that 5 days that we keep it, our mandate isn't going to stop anybody from, isn't going to harm anybody, financially.
Yeah, so then I would go ahead and make those changes so that the state rule doesn't preempt us. Because if we don't do something on Friday, if a restaurant wanted to open or if a hair salon wanted to open, they could do that until such time as you as council put in an alternative rule. Or I put in temporary language and then you guys can finalize it, I guess. I'm a little bit unclear.
We need to hear from everyone.
Holly?
We need to hear from all of
This
them.
is Councilman Schaefer.
Councilman Schaefer.
Yeah, I agree with Councilman Baylor that I think we should stay as is for, starting Friday through next Wednesday, at least when we have our next meeting, so we can talk about it. It'd be more disruptive, I think, to change the rules to go with the state and then put things back into place if that's what we had then decided to do on Wednesday. So I think that would provide the least amount of confusion and greatest continuity is just continue as we are until we've, spoken with our medical team, spoken with the business community, and gotten some public input.
Okay.
Councilman Sherman?
Sherman.
So, but the way I understand it is we will be in conflict on Friday if Helen does not put this in place.
That's what we're saying.
And I believe that.
Go ahead.
I believe that the manager needs to put this in place so that we aren't in conflict, so that we can stay status quo, and then we discuss it with the public, with all our research on next Wednesday.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's what Councilman Baylor and Schaefer were suggesting, and now you're in concurrence. Is there any other 4 councilmen who are not in concurrence with that?
I'm in concurrence, but kind of for a little bit, the same reasons, but a little bit more. We've got this emergency management system set up to act efficiently and early, and if we start cutting them off the knees saying, no, we're not going to let you do what you say you need to do with either the mask ordinance or the coming out of compliance with the new state mandates, it would be counterproductive in the long term. We can take our time to discuss things after the fact and change things if we want to, but if we start taking away their power out of the chute to say, no, you can't do that stuff, we don't agree with you, you need to let us talk it to death before we do anything, would not be the best way to go about that.
We're doing it this way.
Okay, Councilman Allison? I'm just asking if you concur with just leaving the rules as are until the next special meeting.
Yeah, that's okay with me. I still disagree with them. I think we should go with the state, but I'm okay with leaving them like they are till next Wednesday.
Okay, Councilman Meyer?
Yeah, I also agree that we should keep things how they are operating right now, which would be not in compliance with the state coming up on Friday. So we need to keep things closed down, especially since we heard from the incident management team that the mutual agreements for local businesses haven't been all filled out.
So we need to be able to get those from the local businesses and assess what they're doing and have a conversation with them about how they plan to open up to the public in a way that can still keep us safe. So we need to get those things in place, and I think that I and Rest Council is in agreement with incident management team to not open up to the economy come Friday and keep operating how we are in this kind of isolation, social distancing, only essential critical businesses open at this time.
Okay. Councilman Gleason?
Yeah, you got concurrence from me.
Okay. We're on the COVID-19 policy discussion, and what I've takeaways so far on the policy part are include on future agendas. This is a discussion item, this COVID-19 policy discussion item, and for next week's agenda, we'll have the two subpoints, the governor's repealed and the mask ordinance. Is there any further policy discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is Allison.
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, back to the enforcement, just a comment again, and I've stressed it in the past, but I think the key to the enforcement is having the visual presence out there of somebody checking, and whether that's 2, 4, 6, 8, however many you want to have, but as long as there's people out there checking and people see that there's people checking, that's going to be the key. I'm not going to look at, the number of tickets written. I hope that there's no tickets written, but there needs to be a presence in the public showing that we're doing enforcement.
Okay, thank you. Further policy discussion, Council?
Just a quick one.
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, it's because the business plans issue was brought up, and I've had calls to people asking me questions. I refer them to the city site, but I don't allow 5 people in my store and that. So if we have some businesses that haven't turned in their plans, we have all our business lists. It wouldn't be that big of an effort, I don't think, if we could find somebody on staff to call up the businesses and say, hey, your plan's not in. Is there questions? Do you understand? I mean, again, the whole idea is to get everybody to comply and reach out. So, and quite frankly, I'm not even sure I have to have a business plan. I have a business. So that might be a thought, is a way to reach out to people and say, hey, you haven't filed one. You got any questions? What can we do to help? So just a thought.
And to respond to that, just to reassure everyone, in the incident command team, there's subgroups, and there is definitely a group that's working with industry, and they meet every week through telephones. So local businesses, the fishing industry group is meeting. We've had some task forces, and so all of them know, and they're being followed up on with incident command. So there's a lot of those mutual aid agreements that are in. We don't have everyone yet, but we're definitely collecting them regularly, and everyone is complying. So I don't think this is a big issue, but we do have some follow-up to do with specific businesses that we haven't heard from. But many of them just haven't gotten into town.
Okay, other policy discussion, Council? Okay, pending agenda and calendar. And what I have is a special meeting for next week that includes this additional item on the agenda for policy discussions, and specifically to next week, the governor's repealed mandates and the mask. Anything else,
How
Council?
about the work session with NVE? Are we doing that every week, or will?
I believe so.
Okay. But when? What's today?
I think noon Wednesday is what settled on it.
Well, it had been 3 p.m. Thursday, and then it changed to noon Wednesday.
I think we can reach out.
Okay,
And
sounds good.
we'll just reach out to NVE.
Okay.
Okay, hearing no pending agenda items, we're back to
Sorry, this is Selena.
Councilman Meyer.
I would like to have some kind of update or discussion
about finances. It's not something that you have to run out to right today, because I understand the budget's kind of out the window a little bit, but that is one of council's, I think, oversight that we need to get updates about is finances. I know that we got an email about CARES money coming in, and we have a new finance director. So whenever is most convenient to be able to get some documents together, or even just a verbal report to council, I would like some kind of update on finance, where we're at, how much we spent, kind of thing.
May 6th regular meeting item?
Yeah, that was fine.
Okay. So the request, Helen, was for a finance. Okay. I wasn't sure if you caught that. Okay. Thank you, Councilman Meyer. Other pending agenda items?
Yeah, Clay, what exactly is going on Wednesday's agenda that you, I would love an update on our enforcement, how far we've gotten with what we're asking for today.
Okay.
Is that already on there?
So we have the incident management team report. So those items would be presented. Those would be updated on you.
Okay. That's it.
Okay. Other pending agenda items, Council? Okay. We'll go back to audience comments on the audience on the call-in line. And that number again is 253-6202. And you'll be asked to state your name for the record. And when you're taken off hold, mute YouTube. And you'll have 3 minutes for discussion. And I think for expediency, while we're waiting for any of the audience to call in, we can move to council comments. And I'll start with Councilman Gleason.
Just make sure everybody in the community is following the protocols, and I appreciate the letters and stuff that we're getting. You know, a lot of good reminders in there, and that's it. And and I better thank staff. I know there's frustrations that come out during the meeting, and I hope that everybody understands that this is a stressful time. So I'll just take a quote from Tony: "I don't bring my feelings to the meeting." So if I'm doing something that Paul reprimands me for, that's all right. I can take that, and that's it. So that's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Schaefer.
Yeah, thank you to staff and everyone in the community who's volunteering. And also thank you to everyone submitting letters and phone calls. It's good that so many people are engaged and taking this seriously. And yeah, I feel like we had some really good discussions today, so thanks everyone.
Okay, Councilman Baylor.
Oh, I see the new website is up and running, and I appreciate that, all that worked on it. I did get a chance to click on some of the frequently asked questions. I'm assuming there'll be more. You know, as far as the mask issue, I think there'll be some on that. You know, if you work in an office, you don't allow public in, and you keep 6 foot away from their coworker, do you have to wear the mask inside? There's going to be a lot of discussion and clarification. But thanks for all your hard work. Don't anybody take it personal. We're just trying, everybody, the community, everybody's trying to do what's best for the community, and I will always err on the side of getting more public input on anything we can. Thank you.
Councilman Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to really congratulate the CCMC team, Greg Meyer, for all that work he's been doing for funding and the loan and the grants. It shows pretty amazing efforts. And also wanted to compliment staff and Helen on the harbor submission. I know how long that has been in the works. I know how many times we tried, and try again is definitely a good motto, and I'm I think that is a project that will really get some attention this time around. And I just wanted to compliment the IMT team for all that they are doing. I know they're going as fast as they can and double checking signs, but as soon as those signs get up, I know that's going to be a big help. And I'm excited about all the conversation we had today. I think the community service officers are going to be a really great addition to what we need and what I'm hearing from the public. Thanks, everybody, for your time today, too.
Thank you. Councilman Gard?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank staff, command team, and everybody for everything they're doing. It's nice that we're finally having some of these discussions and being able to see some of the work they've had going on for a long time. Makes a lot of us feel better that we now have signs or now have proof of all the stuff's going on, that things that have been getting done. I'd like to thank community members all the way down to the folks wearing a mask and washing their hands several times a day to help take care of themselves and their neighbors and friends and family. This is the only way we're going to beat this if we all do it together. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Allison?
Nothing I can say that hasn't been said already. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Meyer?
Yeah, same. Website looks great, and I know that you guys are still working on doing some fillable forms on there, so that'll be nice to see too. Everything's kind of a work in progress, so just want to encourage the public to still submit their questions to the Cordova Prepared, anything that we can do and the incident management can do to make this easier and get the right information out. And just one thing about face coverings, just everyone remember to wash them at home. I wash mine as soon as I get home, just in the sink with some hot water and some soap, and then hang it to dry. And I have my other one that's already dried, clean, so that if I need to go outside while that was drying, it's really easy to do. I know that face coverings are hard to get a hold of. People are working hard to get them sewed up. There's a couple options to purchase, and I know I was using a handkerchief and a scarf while I was waiting for mine to come in. So there's some options out there. Google them, keep them clean, and stay safe, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Meyer. So we didn't have any audience comments call in, but your incident commander wanted to have some wrap-up audience comments.
Yeah, just one last thing. I'd like to let everybody know that, the city of Cordova is known throughout the state of Alaska for our emergency response. And our incident management team and our City of Cordova Council community, we are actually years ahead of most communities where we stand right now. Our medical staff started this back in January and February, started working together. So our plans are working. Most communities don't have a harbor plan. Most communities don't have an airport plan. Most communities don't have an incident management team. So if we're just waiting on a sign to go up in a harbor, I feel pretty good about where we're at right now. So thank you.
Thank you. So we just have one more item. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any objection? Hearing none, we're adjourned.